At 11:47 p.m., Daniel Mercer got on the last train home. He did the same thing every night. Same platform, same tired faces, same flickering ads on the tunnel wall. Nothing about that night felt important? Not at first. The train arrived 3 minutes late, which wasn't strange. The city's subway system was always late. After 10 p.m. Daniel stepped inside, took the same seat near the middle doors, and looked down at his phone. No signal. Also normal. The train pulled away from Westbridge Station, lights flashing across the windows in long silver streaks. Daniel leaned his head back. He only meant to close his eyes for a second, but when the train stopped, something was different. The doors opened. A cold draft moved through the car. Daniel opened his eyes and looked up. The sign outside the doors said, Ashbury North. He blinked. That wasn't possible. There was no Ashbury North. Not on the blue line, not on any line. Daniel knew the subway map better than most people. He had taken this route for 9 years. After Westbridge came Carlton. After Carlton came Mason Square, then home. There was no stop in between, and yet the doors were open. The platform outside was clean. Too clean. No gum stains. No posters peeling off the walls. No coffee cups near the tracks. No graffiti scratched into the tile. Just pale lights, white walls, and a station name printed in black letters. ASHB, URY North. Daniel looked around the train. No one else reacted. A woman in a red coat kept reading her book. An older man stared straight ahead. A teenager with headphones tapped his foot to music Daniel couldn't hear. Nobody seemed confused. Nobody seemed afraid. The warning chime sounded. Daniel should have stayed seated. That was the first thing he would think later. He should have stayed on the train. But something about the station pulled at him. Not loudly. Not like fear. More like recognition. Like walking past a stranger and realizing, for half a second, that you know them from somewhere. Daniel stood. The doors began to close. He stepped onto the platform, and the train pulled away behind him. The second it disappeared into the tunnel, the station became silent. Not quiet, silent. There was no hum from the lights, no distant rumble from another train, no echo from the city above. Daniel turned slowly. A staircase led upward at the far end of the platform. Beside it was a subway map. He walked over. The map looked normal at first. Same colored lines, same familiar neighborhoods, same transfer points. But then he found Ashbury North. It was there, a small black dot between Westbridge and Carlton. Like it had always been there. Daniel took out his phone and opened the transit app. Still no signal. He tried his messages. Nothing. Then he noticed the time. 11:47 p.m. That was wrong. It had been 11:47 when he got on the train. He stared at the screen. The minute hadn't changed. Daniel looked back down the empty platform. Hello! His voice carried too far. Then, from somewhere above him, a speaker crackled. A calm woman's voice came through. Next train arriving in 4 minutes. Daniel exhaled. Good. That meant he could leave. He sat on a bench and waited. 4 minutes passed. No train came. The speaker crackled again. Next train arriving in 4 minutes. Daniel stood. The time on his phone still said 11:47. He walked to the edge of the platform and looked into the tunnel. Darkness. Not normal tunnel darkness. This was thicker, like the tunnel didn't continue, like it ended just beyond the reach of the platform lights. Then Daniel heard footsteps, slow, measured. Coming from the staircase, he turned. A man in a gray transit uniform stepped onto the platform. He looked about 60. Thin face, white hair, name badge turned backward. Daniel felt relief so strong it almost made him laugh. Excuse me, he said. I think there's been some mistake. What station is this? The man looked at him. Ashbury North. Right, but that station doesn't exist? The man didn't answer. Daniel gave a nervous smile. I mean, I've taken this line for years. There's no stop here. The man looked toward the tunnel. Most people don't notice it. Daniel's smile faded. What does that mean? The man turned back to him. It means you were looking at the wrong moment. A chill moved up Daniel's arms. The speaker crackled again. Next train arriving in 4 minutes. Daniel glanced toward the tunnel. When does the train actually come? The man's expression didn't change. When you stop waiting for it? Daniel let out a short laugh, but there was no humor in it. Okay, is there an exit? The man pointed toward the stairs. Daniel started walking. Halfway there, he turned back. The man was gone. Not walking away. not hidden behind a pillar. Gone. Daniel climbed the stairs quickly. At the top was a corridor lined with white tiles. Too many lights. Every few feet, a poster was mounted behind glass. But they weren't advertisements. They were photographs. Black and white images of empty places. A bedroom. Kitchen table. A hospital hallway. A school gym. Parking lot at night. Daniel slowed. One photo showed a subway platform. This subway platform. Ashbury North. But there were people in the picture. Dozens of them. Standing still, facing the camera. Daniel leaned closer. The photo had a small label beneath it. Passengers who exited, 1989. His throat tightened. He moved to the next photo. A bus stop in the rain. Passengers who exited, 1996. Another. An office elevator. Passengers who exited, 2008. Daniel stepped back. The corridor seemed longer than before. At the far end was a turnstile. Beyond it, a stairwell leading up. He hurried toward it. The turnstile accepted no card, no ticket, no payment. There was only a small black screen. As Daniel approached, it lit up. Please confirm destination. Below the words was one option. Home. Daniel hesitated, then pressed it. The turnstile clicked. He pushed through and climbed the stairs. At the top, he expected the city. Cold air. Traffic. Streetlights. Noise. Instead, he found another platform. Same white walls, same black letters. A, S, H, B, U, R, Y, North. Daniel froze. Behind him, the stairs were gone. In their place was a tiled wall. The speaker crackled. Next train arriving in 4 minutes. This time, Daniel didn't wait. He ran, down the platform, past the bench, past the map, past a row of pillars that seemed to repeat too many times. At the far end was a maintenance door. He grabbed the handle. Locked. He kicked it once. Then again. The sound echoed through the station. Something fell from the top of the door frame. A small metal key. Daniel stared at it. It had been taped there. Waiting. His hand shook as he picked it up and unlocked the door. Inside was a narrow service hallway. The air smelled like dust and old paper. Pipes ran along the ceiling. At the end of the hall was a small office. Daniel stepped inside. There was a desk, a chair, a wall clock. The clock read 11:47. On the desk sat a logbook. Its cover was cracked and faded. Daniel opened it. The pages were filled with names, dates, times. Some entries were decades old. Some were recent. He ran his finger down the page until he saw the last entry. Daniel Mercer, 11:47 p.m. Westbridge Line. Status, not yet decided. He stopped breathing for a second. Then he flipped backward. There were hundreds of names, maybe thousands. Each one had a status. Returned. Remained. Forgotten. Delayed. Not yet decided. Daniel turned the page. A photograph slipped out. He picked it up. It showed a woman standing on the platform. Young. Dark hair. Blue scarf. Daniel knew her. His mother. But that was impossible. She had died when he was 12. The photo label read, Evelyn Mercer, Ashbury North, 2001. Daniel's legs weakened. He sat in the chair. His mother had died in a car accident. That was what he had always been told. Rainy night, bad intersection, no witnesses. But in the photograph, she was standing right there. At Ashbury North, Daniel turned the photo over. There was writing on the back. She noticed the station. She chose to return. She forgot what she saw. Daniel read it 3 times. Then the office light flickered. The old transit worker stood in the doorway. Daniel shot to his feet. What is this place? The man looked tired now. Not threatening. Just tired. A stop. That's not an answer. It's the only one that fits. Daniel held up the photo. My mother was here? Yes. What happened to her? She went back. She passed. The man looked down. Not right away. Daniel stepped toward him. What does that mean? The man's voice lowered. Some people leave this place and forget. But something follows them out. Not a thing. Not a person. A change. Daniel shook his head. No. She saw something she wasn't supposed to see. What? The man looked toward the platform. The pattern? Daniel felt anger rise in him, sharp and sudden. What pattern? The man didn't answer. So Daniel grabbed the logbook and turned it around. What does "not yet decided" mean? The worker looked at the name. It means the station hasn't finished showing you why you're here. Daniel laughed once under his breath. I'm here because I got off the train. No, the man said. You got off the train because you were already here. The station lights dimmed. The station lights dimmed. Only for a second, but when they came back, the office had changed. The desk was gone. The logbook was gone. The worker was gone. Daniel was standing in his apartment. He knew it immediately. Same couch. Same kitchen counter. Same stack of unopened mail. But everything was still. Too still. He walked to the window. The city outside was frozen. Cars sat motionless in the street. Rain hung in the air without falling. Across the room, his phone buzzed. Daniel turned. It was on the counter. The screen showed one new voicemail. From Mom? Daniel backed away. The phone buzzed again. He didn't want to touch it. But he did. The voicemail began with static. Then his mother's voice came through. Soft. Far away. Danny, if you're hearing this, then you found the stop. Daniel sank slowly onto the couch. Her voice trembled. I didn't understand it either. Not at first. I thought it was a mistake. I thought I could leave and pretend I never saw it. Static? Then she continued. But Ashbury North doesn't appear by accident. It appears when your life is about to split. Daniel closed his eyes. When I found it, I was supposed to miss the train. If I missed it, I would have lived. If I got back on, I would die years later exactly how I did. Daniel opened his eyes. The room felt smaller. But I went back. Because you were home. Because you were waiting. Because I thought choosing the life I knew was the same as choosing safety. Her voice cracked. It wasn't. The message distorted. Then came one final sentence. When the train comes, don't ask where it goes. Ask what it costs. The voicemail ended. The apartment vanished. Daniel was back on the platform. The speaker crackled. Next train arriving in 4 minutes. Only this time, the tunnel wasn't dark. A light was coming. Small at first. Then brighter. A train. Daniel stepped back. The old worker stood beside him. Daniel didn't look at him. Where does it go? The worker answered quietly. Depends which door you enter. The train slowed into the station. It was not the train Daniel had boarded earlier. This one was older. Silver sides. Dim interior lights. No advertisements. When the doors opened, Daniel saw the inside clearly. Each car was different. In the first car, he saw himself at home the next morning. Waking up, going to work, forgetting the station, living normally. For a while, in the second car, he saw a hospital room, his sister crying beside a bed, his bed. In the third car, he saw his mother, not older, not dead, standing in a small kitchen Daniel didn't recognize. Waiting? The old worker spoke. Every exit is real. Every exit takes something. Daniel looked at the third car. My mother is alive. In that direction? What does it cost? The worker didn't answer. Daniel turned to him. What does it cost? The worker's face looked older than before. You. Daniel stared at him. The station was silent again. The worker nodded toward the first car. That one gives you back the life you know. You forget everything. The station closes. Your path continues. Daniel looked at the second car. And that one. That one shows you what happens if you remember too much and still return. Daniel swallowed. And the third? The worker looked toward Daniel's mother. That one gives you what you lost, but removes you from everyone who knows you now. They won't mourn you. They won't search. They won't remember you existed. Daniel's eyes burned. Inside the third car, his mother turned. For the first time, she saw him. Her hand went to her mouth. Danny. The sound of her voice almost broke him. He stepped toward the car. The worker said nothing. The warning chime sounded. Daniel looked at his mother. Then at the first car. Normal life. His apartment. His job. His sister. His friends. Everything he understood. Then he looked at his mother again. The doors began to close. Daniel moved, but not toward the third car. He stepped into the first. His mother's face changed, not sadness. Understanding. The doors closed between them. Daniel pressed his hand to the glass. She smiled. Then the train pulled away. The lights flickered. Daniel blinked. He was sitting on the subway. Middle doors. Same seat. His phone in his hand. The train was pulling into Carlton Station. The woman in the red coat was still reading. The older man was still staring forward. The teenager still tapped his foot. Daniel looked at his phone. 11:52 p.m. signal had returned. For a moment, he couldn't remember why his hands were shaking. Then he saw something on his screen. A voicemail from an unknown number. Received at 11:47 p.m., he stared at it. He didn't press play. The train doors opened. People got off. People got on. Daniel stayed seated. At the next stop, Mason Square, he stood and walked home in the rain. He did not sleep that night. By morning, he had convinced himself it was stress. The dream. A strange half-sleep moment on the train. He deleted the voicemail without listening. And for 3 months, nothing happened. Then one night, his sister called. Their mother's old belongings had been sitting in storage for years, and she had finally started going through them. "There's something weird in one of the boxes," she said. Daniel felt cold before she explained. "What is it?" "A subway map," she said. "Really old one." Daniel gripped the phone. "And there's a station on it I've never heard of." Daniel closed his eyes. His sister laughed nervously. "Have you ever heard of Ashbury North?" Daniel didn't answer, because across the room, his apartment lights flickered. Once. Then the clock on his microwave changed, 11:47, and somewhere far beneath the city, a speaker crackled to life. Next train arriving in 4 minutes. At 6:17 on a Tuesday morning, traffic stopped on Highway 9. Not because of an accident, not construction, not weather. Hundreds of cars simply pulled onto the shoulder at exactly the same mile marker. Engines still running. Doors left open, coffee in cup holders, phones on seats. No drivers anywhere, except one car still moving toward the line. Rachel Bennett first saw the brake lights from half a mile away. She was driving north toward Bell County when the road curved through a stretch of pine forest. Red lights filled the distance. Hundreds of them. She sighed and slowed down. Probably an accident. Maybe a fallen tree. She checked the dashboard clock. 6:17 a.m. She was already late. Then she noticed something strange. The cars weren't stopped in the road. They had pulled over. Every one of them. Sedans, pickup trucks, delivery vans, a school bus, all parked neatly along both shoulders. Rachel slowed to 30, then 20. She passed the first vehicle, a blue sedan, driver's door open. Engine running, no one inside. The next car was the same. Door open, empty, then another, and another. Rachel took her foot off the accelerator. Her car rolled forward slowly. On the opposite shoulder, a delivery truck sat with its hazard lights flashing. The rear doors were open. Boxes still stacked inside. No driver. Rachel whispered, "What happened here?" She kept moving. Maybe everyone had been evacuated. But evacuated from what? There was no smoke. No police. No emergency vehicles. No damaged cars. Nothing in the road. Then she passed a minivan. Its sliding door was open. A phone rested on the driver's seat, the screen still glowing. Rachel stopped her car. For several seconds, she stayed behind the wheel. The highway stretched ahead through the trees. Parked vehicles disappeared around the next bend. Behind her were empty cars. She picked up her phone. No signal. That was unusual. Highway 9 had spotty coverage, but not here. She tried emergency calling. Nothing. Rachel stepped out. The sound hit her immediately. Engines. Hundreds of them. Idling together. Low mechanical hum stretching through the forest. But no voices. No footsteps. No people. She walked toward the minivan. "Hello?" Nothing. Inside, the radio played quietly. Morning news. A coffee sat in the cup holder and still steaming. Rachel touched the cup. Warm. Whoever had been driving had left recently. Very recently. She looked at the phone on the seat. A navigation app was still open. Destination, Bell County. Estimated arrival, 6:42 a.m. Rachel frowned. That was where she was going. Then the phone screen changed. Not an alert, not a message. The navigation route simply recalculated. The blue line ended at Rachel's current location, mile 87. She looked toward the small green marker beside the road. Rachel backed away from the minivan. She checked the next car. Empty. A pickup truck? Empty. Compact car? Empty. But each vehicle contained the same signs of interruption. A half-eaten breakfast sandwich, a lit cigarette burned down into an ashtray, a laptop open on the passenger seat. One car had its windshield wipers moving across perfectly dry glass. Rachel walked farther. Then she noticed the first footprint. Mud? A single shoe print beside a silver SUV. Then another, and another. Dozens. Rachel stopped. There were footprints everywhere. Leading away from the cars, not toward the forest, not down the highway, toward the center line. She followed them. The prints from both shoulders converged in the middle of the road. Hundreds of overlapping tracks. Shoes, boots, bare feet. All gathering at the same point. Mile 87, then... They stopped. Rachel crouched. The asphalt ahead was clean. No tracks leaving. No drag marks. No blood. Nothing. Hundreds of people had apparently walked to the center of Highway 9 and then disappeared. Rachel stood slowly. A car horn sounded behind her. She spun around. One long blast, then silence. It came from a black sedan 20 yards away. Rachel walked toward it. The driver's door was closed, unlike the others. She looked through the window. Empty. The horn sounded again. Rachel jumped back. The steering wheel wasn't moving. Nobody was pressing it. Then the rear passenger window lowered by itself. Slowly. Rachel stared into the dark interior. Something lay on the back seat. A camera. Old. Digital. She hesitated. Then opened the rear door. The camera screen was still on. One photograph displayed. Rachel picked it up. The image showed Highway 9. The same cars, the same open doors, the same empty road, but the photograph had been taken from high above, as if someone had stood among the trees on the hillside. Rachel clicked backward. Another photograph. Taken at 6:11 a.m. Cars still moving normally. Another. 6:12. Brake lights. Another. 6:13. Vehicles pulling onto the shoulders. Another. 6:14. Driver stepping out. Rachel leaned closer. Every driver in the photograph was looking in the same direction. Not toward the forest. Not toward the sky. Toward mile 87. She clicked again. 6:15. Hundreds of people walking toward the center of the highway. Rachel's breathing slowed. Next photograph. 6:16. Everyone standing together. Perfectly still. Facing north. Then the final photograph. 6:17. Empty road. Rachel stared at the screen. Something was wrong. She went back to the 6:16 image, zoomed in. Hundreds of people stood shoulder to shoulder. Men, women, workers, commuters. Every face turned north, except one. Near the back of the crowd, a man looked directly toward the camera. Rachel zoomed closer. His face was blurred. Not motion blur. Everything around him was sharp. Only his face was missing detail. Then she noticed his hand. He was pointing. Not north. Toward the camera. Rachel lowered it. The forest suddenly felt closer. She looked toward the hillside. Trees. Shadows. Nothing else. Then she heard a phone ringing. Somewhere among the cars. Rachel followed the sound. It came from a white pickup. The phone sat on the dashboard. Incoming call. The caller ID displayed a Rachel Bennett. She froze. Her own name. Her own number. Rachel looked at the phone in her hand. No signal. No outgoing call. The dashboard phone continued ringing. She didn't answer. After 6 rings, it stopped. A voicemail notification appeared. Rachel stared at it. Then pressed play. Static. Breathing. Then her own voice. Quiet. Terrified. Don't drive past the mile marker. The recording ended. Rachel stepped backward. She looked down the highway. Her car was parked 50 yards away. Behind mile 87. She hadn't crossed it. Not yet. Then an engine revved, farther north. Rachel turned. A red station wagon sat alone beyond the marker. Its driver's door was open. The engine roared again, then stopped. Someone was inside. Rachel could see movement. A person in the driver's seat. She shouted, "Hey!" The figure didn't respond. Rachel walked closer. 10 yards, 5. Then stopped at the mile marker. The green sign stood beside her. 87. The station wagon was perhaps 20 feet beyond it. The person inside slowly turned. Rachel's stomach tightened. It was a woman. Same dark coat. Same hair. Same face. Rachel. Sitting behind the wheel? The other Rachel stared at her through the windshield, then raised one finger to her lips. Quiet. Rachel couldn't move. The station wagon radio turned on. A man's voice filled the empty highway. Not an emergency broadcast. Not an announcement. Just an ordinary traffic reporter. Northbound Highway 9 remains clear this morning. Rachel looked around at hundreds of abandoned vehicles. The reporter continued. No delays reported between Ashbury and Bell County. Ashbury. Rachel knew that name. Everyone did. A town 30 miles south, but something about hearing it here made her uneasy. The other Rachel inside the station wagon looked toward the trees. Rachel followed her gaze. At first, nothing. Then she saw them. People. Standing between the pines. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. The missing drivers. Scattered through the forest. Motionless. All facing the highway. Rachel stepped back. One of them moved. Not walking, just turning his head. Then another. Then another. Slowly, every person in the forest looked toward her. Rachel ran. She sprinted back toward her car. The engines around her began shutting off. One by one. Click. Silence. Click. Silence. Click. Wave moving down the highway. Every vehicle dying behind her. Rachel reached her car. Jumped inside. Locked the doors. Started the engine. The dashboard clock read 6:17 a.m. Still, she had been outside for at least 20 minutes. The clock hadn't moved. Rachel threw the car into reverse. She didn't turn around. She drove backward down Highway 9. Past the minivan. Past the delivery truck. Past rows of abandoned cars. Then something appeared in her rearview mirror. The people from the forest. They were standing on the highway now. Hundreds of them. At mile 87. Watching her leave. Rachel kept reversing. Faster. The crowd became smaller in the distance. Then her phone regained signal. Messages arrived all at once. Missed calls, emails, notifications. Rachel stopped the car. The dashboard clock changed. 7:04 a.m. 47 minutes had passed. She called emergency services. This time, someone answered. Rachel told them everything. The abandoned cars, the footprints, the people in the trees. Mile 87. The dispatcher went quiet, then asked, "Ma'am, what highway are you on?" Highway 9. Another pause. Rachel looked through the windshield. The road behind her was empty. The dispatcher spoke carefully. Highway 9 has been closed since 1998. Rachel said nothing. "Ma'am?" The dispatcher continued. "The bridge north of Ashbury collapsed 28 years ago." Rachel looked toward the line of abandoned vehicles. Except, they weren't there anymore. The shoulders were empty. No cars, no trucks, no school bus, nothing. Only forest. Rachel slowly stepped out of her vehicle. The road surface beneath her looked older now, cracked, overgrown. Weeds pushed through the asphalt. She walked toward the nearest mile marker. The green paint had faded almost completely, but the number remained. Something white lay in the grass beneath it. A photograph. Rachel picked it up. Highway 9. Hundreds of people standing in the center of the road. Facing north, the photograph was dated June 14th, 1998. Rachel scanned the crowd, then stopped. Near the back stood a woman in a dark coat. Her face turned directly toward the camera. Rachel Bennett. She dropped the photograph. Behind her, a car horn sounded once. Rachel turned. Her own car sat empty. Driver's door open, engine running. Her phone rested on the seat. The screen still glowing. Navigation active. Destination, Ashbury. Estimated arrival, 6:42 a.m. Rachel Bennett was never reported missing. There was no record of her vehicle being recovered. And according to State Transportation Archives, Mile 87 had been removed from Highway 9 maps after the bridge collapse. But every few years, drivers traveling north before sunrise report the same thing. A line of cars parked neatly along both shoulders. Doors open. Engines running. And hundreds of people standing in the road, waiting for one more car to arrive. If you enjoy mysteries that leave the final piece for you to solve, subscribe to 10-Minute Mysteries. And if the name Ashbury sounded familiar, There's a reason. In the previous story, a utility worker entered a town where every resident had vanished, except for one house with its porch light still on. Watch everyone left town in 1 hour, except one house next. Because Rachel may not have been driving toward an empty town. She may have been driving toward the place everyone from Highway 9 disappeared to. The first photograph arrived at 4:12 on a Thursday afternoon. No envelope, no stamp, no note. It was simply lying on Nora Bell's kitchen table when she came home from work. She noticed it before she noticed anything else. Glossy photograph, face down, centered perfectly between the salt shaker and a bowl of oranges. Nora stopped in the doorway. She lived alone. The apartment door had been locked. The windows were closed. Nothing else looked disturbed. She set her bag down slowly, then turned the photograph over. It showed the front page of a newspaper. The ASHBURY record. Friday, October 18th. Nora frowned. Today was Thursday, October 17th. Tomorrow's date. She almost laughed. Some kind of promotional stunt. Maybe an advertisement. Then she read the headline. Local pharmacy destroyed in early morning fire. Beneath it was a photograph of Keller's Pharmacy on West Avenue. Flames pouring through the roof. Firefighters in the street. Nora knew the place. She passed it every morning on her way to work. She looked closer. At the bottom of the photograph, part of another headline was visible. Only 3 words. One still missing? Nora turned the photograph over. Blank. No handwriting? No logo? Nothing. She checked her apartment. Bedroom, bathroom, closets, balcony. No one? She checked the lock. No damage. Then she called the newspaper. The receptionist answered on the 3rd ring. Ashbury record. Nora looked again at the photograph. Hi. This might sound strange, but are you running a story tomorrow about Keller's Pharmacy? Silence? Then, about what? A fire. The receptionist laughed politely. I hope not. Nora didn't. She hung up. At 6:38 the next morning, she woke to sirens. Nora ran to the window. Smoke rose beyond the buildings. West Avenue, she grabbed her phone. Local news was already reporting it. Keller's Pharmacy had caught fire at 5:51 a.m. The photograph slipped from Nora's hand. She stared at the headline again. Same building. Same flames? Same angle. Then she noticed something she hadn't before. In the newspaper image, behind the firefighters, stood a woman in a dark coat, watching the fire. Nora zoomed in with her phone camera. The woman's face was grainy, but the coat was familiar. Nora looked toward the chair beside her bed. Her dark coat hung over the back. She hadn't gone anywhere near the pharmacy. The second photograph arrived that afternoon, 4:12 p.m. Exactly. This time it was inside her refrigerator. Nora opened the door for milk and found it leaning against the carton. She dropped the handle. The photograph showed another front page, Saturday, October 19th. Tomorrow, the headline read, Commuter train evacuated after unexplained stop. The image showed passengers standing beside the tracks, the train motionless behind them. Nora scanned the photograph. There, near the back. The same woman, dark coat, facing away from the camera. Nora. She checked the smaller headlines. One caught her attention. A. SHBURY fire investigation continues. Another, missing man's car found empty. Nora froze. Missing man. She looked back at yesterday's photograph. The partial headline. One still missing. She placed both photographs side by side. Different days. Different events. But the same woman appeared in both. Her. At 8 o'clock the next morning, Nora did something she normally never did. She stayed home. The commuter train in the photograph was the 8:16 northbound. Her train. She called in sick, closed the curtains, turned off her phone. At 8:43, nothing had happened. Nora almost felt ridiculous. Then her landline rang. She stared at it. Nobody used that number? She answered. Hello? Static. Then a man's voice. You weren't on the train. Nora gripped the receiver. Who is this? The line went dead. She turned on the television. Breaking news. The 8:16 northbound train had stopped between Ashbury and Bell County. No mechanical failure. No obstruction. The driver had simply brought the train to a halt, then disappeared from the cab. Passengers had been evacuated. Nora grabbed the photograph. Same train, same location, same crowd, but something had changed. The woman in the dark coat was gone. Nora stared. She knew she had seen herself there. She was certain. Now, only empty space remained. Then she noticed someone else. A man standing where she had been, tall, gray jacket, face turned toward the camera. Nora didn't recognize him, but he was holding something. A photograph. At 4:12 that afternoon, Nora sat at the kitchen table waiting. Nothing happened. 4:13. 4:14? She exhaled. Then someone knocked on the apartment door. 3 soft knocks. Nora didn't move. Another 3. She looked through the peephole. Empty hallway. She opened the door. No one. On the floor, a photograph. Sunday, October 20th. The headline was larger this time. Woman found dead in apartment. Police seek information. Nora stopped breathing. The photograph beneath the headline showed her building. Police cars outside. Yellow tape across the entrance. She read the article. The text was too blurred, except for one line. The victim has not yet been identified. Nora stepped backward into the apartment. Her hands shook. She looked at the newspaper date. Tomorrow. Then at the photograph of the building. 3rd floor. One window illuminated. Her window. Nora called the police. She told them someone had entered her apartment. Left photographs. Threatened her. She didn't mention tomorrow's newspapers. Not at first. 2 officers arrived. They checked every room. No forced entry. No hidden cameras. No fingerprints on the photographs except Nora's. One officer studied the image of the building. Where did you get this? I told you. No? I mean the photo itself. Nora shook her head. The officer pointed toward the street in the image. A police cruiser sat outside. Vehicle number 214. The officer looked through Nora's rear window. His cruiser was parked below. Vehicle 214. Nora felt cold. The officer lowered the photograph. We should get you somewhere else tonight. At 9:30 p.m., Nora checked into a hotel across town. Different name. Cash payment. Room 608. She told no one where she was going. The officers had offered protection. She refused. If the photograph showed her apartment, she wanted to be anywhere else. At 11:47 p.m., Nora sat awake on the hotel bed. Television muted, curtains closed, the 3 photographs spread in front of her. Pharmacy, train, apartment. She began examining them again, not the headlines, the backgrounds, and then she saw it. The man in the gray jacket. He was at the pharmacy fire, far behind the firefighters. She hadn't noticed him before. He was also at the train, holding the photograph, and in the apartment image, he stood across the street, looking up at Nora's window. Same man. 3 different days. Nora took pictures of each photograph with her phone. Zoomed in. Compared them. Gray jacket. Dark hair. Same posture. Then she noticed something worse. In the first image, he looked young. Maybe 30? In the second, older? 40. In the third, at least 60. Nora stared. The events were 1 day apart. The man was aging decades between photographs. The hotel room phone rang. Nora screamed, then answered. No static this time. The man's voice was clear. You keep changing them. Nora said nothing. The photographs? Who are you? A pause? Then, I don't know anymore. Nora stood slowly. What do you want? I want you to stop preventing what you see. Her eyes moved to the train photograph. You knew I stayed home. Yes. Are you sending these? Another pause. No. Then who is? The man began to laugh. Not because anything was funny. Because he sounded exhausted. Nora. Her grip tightened. How do you know my name? You asked me that the first time too. The line went dead. At 4:12 the next morning, Nora woke suddenly. The hotel room was dark. Something slid beneath the door. Photograph. She waited. No footsteps. No shadow in the hall. She picked it up. Monday, October 21st. The headline, A.S.H.B.O.R.Y. Record closes after 112 years. The photograph showed the newspaper office. Windows dark. Employees carrying boxes outside. Nora almost laughed from relief. No fire. No death. No disappearance. Then she looked at the bottom corner. A smaller article, you identified woman found in hotel room. Room number. Nora dropped the photograph. She ran. No coat. No luggage. She took the stairs. 6 floors. Lobby? Street. She kept moving until the hotel disappeared behind her. At 5:03 a.m., police entered room 608 after a noise complaint. The room was empty. No body, no sign of violence. But the bed was wet, not with blood. Rainwater, and on the pillow lay a newspaper dated Monday, October 21st. Tomorrow, Nora went to the Ashbury Record office. The building opened at 6. She arrived at 5:41. One light was already on. Inside, printing presses rumbled. Nora pounded on the glass. A man appeared. Gray jacket, dark hair, about 50 years old. The man from the photographs, he saw Nora and closed his eyes, as if he had been hoping she wouldn't come. Nora pushed through the unlocked door. You! The man stepped backward. You came earlier this time. Nora stopped. This time, the presses continued behind him. Thousands of newspapers moving through the machines. He looked toward them. You need to leave. Are you sending the photographs? No. Then explain them? I can't. You said I keep changing them. The man looked older than he had seconds ago. Nora blinked. For one impossible moment, his hair seemed grayer. He walked toward the press room. Nora followed. Stacks of tomorrow's newspaper filled the floor. Monday, October 21st. She grabbed one. The front page was blank. No headlines. No photographs. Only the date. Nora whispered, "What is this?" The man said, "Wait." The printing press slammed once. Ink spread across the first page in Nora's hands. Letters appeared. Local woman enters a SHBURY record at 5:41 a.m. Nora dropped it. Another line printed beneath. CHA is currently standing beside press 2O. Nora looked up. A metal sign above her. Press 2. She stepped away. The newspaper changed. As she steps away, Nora threw it onto the floor. Every blank newspaper in the room began printing at once. Thousands of pages. Thousands of identical headlines. Nora Bell has arrived. The man grabbed her arm. Now do you understand? No? Neither did I. The presses stopped. Silence. The man released her. Then pointed toward a wall. Old front pages. Framed. Decades of Ashbury history. Nora moved closer. Factory closure. Election scandal. Highway 9 bridge collapse. Nora froze. The photograph showed a line of vehicles on an old highway. People standing near mile 87. At the edge of the image, a man in a gray jacket. Young. Maybe 25. The man beside Nora whispered, "That was the first time I saw myself." Nora turned. "You were there?" "No." He looked at the photograph. "Not yet." The lights flickered. When they returned red, the man looked 70. Nora backed away. He smiled sadly. "I think the newspaper is trying to finish something." "What?" "I don't know." "Why me?" The man looked toward the presses. "Because I'm almost out of time." Then every machine activated. One page printed. Only one. It slid onto the floor between them. Nora picked it up. Tuesday, October 22nd. The front page showed a photograph of the Ashbury Record press room. Nora stood alone. The man was gone. The headline read, "New archivist appointed after unexplained disappearance." Nora looked up. The gray-jacketed man was still there. "For now," he whispered. "Don't change this one." Then the lights went out. 1 second, maybe 2. When they returned, he was gone. His gray jacket lay on the floor. Nora ran outside. The street was empty. She called police. No record of the man. No employee matched his description. No one at the Ashbury Record remembered hiring him. But in the archive room, Nora found photographs. Hundreds. Tomorrow's fires. Tomorrow's accidents. Tomorrow's missing people. Some had been prevented. Some had happened exactly as shown. And in nearly every photograph, the gray-jacketed man appeared somewhere in the background, growing older. Until the final photograph, Nora found it inside a box marked "Not Yet Printed." It showed a highway, mile 87, hundreds of abandoned cars, open doors, No drivers. A woman stood alone in the road, Rachel Bennett. And beside the mile marker stood Nora Bell, wearing a gray jacket, holding a photograph. The picture had no date. Nora never returned home. 3 weeks later, the Ashbury Record hired a new archivist. At least, that is what the employment records claimed. Her name was Nora Bell. Every afternoon at exactly 4:12, she entered the archive room alone. And sometimes, people across Ashbury found photographs in locked apartments. Inside refrigerators, under hotel doors, pictures of tomorrow's newspaper. Most people ignored them. Some tried to change what they saw. And every now and then, someone noticed the woman in the background. Gray jacket, watching, getting older. If you enjoy mysteries where every answer creates a worse question, subscribe to 10-Minute Mysteries. And if mile 87 sounded familiar, watch the previous story. The entire highway stopped at the same mile marker, because Nora found a photograph of Rachel Bennett before she ever reached that road, which means the newspaper may not have been predicting what happened on Highway 9. It may have been waiting for it. At 9:43 on a Sunday night, Daniel Cross walked into the Bellweather Hotel and asked for a room. The woman behind the desk looked at him, then dropped her pen. Daniel noticed. "Everything okay?" The woman didn't answer. She was staring at his face, not confused, not surprised, afraid. Daniel looked behind him. The lobby was empty. The woman slowly stood. "What did you say your name was?" to Daniel Cross. Her face lost what little color it had left. Then she whispered, "No." Daniel frowned. "No?" The woman stepped backward from the desk. "You can't be Daniel Cross?" He almost laughed. "I'm pretty sure I am." She didn't. Instead, she reached beneath the counter and pulled out an old brass key. A rectangular tag hung from it. Room 214. She placed it carefully on the desk. Daniel looked at the key. "I haven't checked in yet." The woman said, "You checked in 30 years ago." Daniel had been driving for 6 hours. He was tired. The rain outside was getting worse. And under any other circumstances, he would have turned around and found another hotel. But the highway behind him had flooded. The Bellweather was the only place still open. He looked at the woman's name tag. Margaret. "Okay," Daniel said. "I think you have me confused with someone." Margaret shook her head. "I don't. You just said I checked in 30 years ago." "Yes, I'm 32, I know." That stopped him. Daniel stared at her. "How do you know how old I am?" Margaret looked toward the staircase. The Bellweather was an old building. 3 floors. Dark wood. Brass fixtures. The kind of hotel that had survived by refusing to change. The grandfather clock ticked near the fireplace. 9:44. Margaret lowered her voice. "Room 214 has been closed since 1996. Daniel glanced at the key again. "Why?" "Because the guests never checked out." "Then call the police." "We did. They couldn't find him." Daniel waited. Margaret continued. "They couldn't find any record that he existed." Rain struck the lobby windows. Daniel rubbed his forehead. "I'm too tired for this." He reached for his wallet. "I just need any room." Margaret didn't move. "Your reservation is still active." Daniel slowly lowered his wallet. "What reservation?" She turned the computer monitor toward him. The hotel system looked modern. A booking page filled the screen. Guest. Daniel Cross. Room 214. Arrival November 3rd, 1996. Departure blank. Daniel stared. "That's not possible." Margaret clicked the guest profile. No phone number, no email, no address. Only one note: do not reassign room. Guest will return. Daniel read it twice, then a third time. Who wrote that? Margaret said, "My father?" Margaret locked the front doors, not because Daniel asked her to, because she said she didn't want anyone else entering while they talked. Her father, Henry Vale, had owned the Bellweather in 1996. On November 3rd of that year, a man arrived alone shortly before midnight. He signed the register, paid cash, asked for room 214, nothing unusual. Until morning. The room was empty. His suitcase remained. His clothes? His wallet? His car was still outside. But the man was gone. Police searched the hotel, then the town. then the surrounding woods. Nothing. Daniel asked, "What does that have to do with me?" Margaret walked into a small office behind reception. She returned carrying a ledger. Hold. Dusty. She opened it to a marked page. November 3rd, 1996. One line had been circled in faded red ink. 214, Daniel Cross. Daniel stared at the handwriting. Then he noticed the signature. His signature. Not similar. Not close. His. Daniel pulled out his driver's license. The signature along the bottom matched. Same sharp D. Same strange upward line at the end. Margaret whispered, "My father kept the room exactly as it was." Daniel looked toward the staircase. For 30 years, he said the guests would come back. Why? He never told me. Margaret closed the ledger. He died waiting. At 10:07 p.m., Daniel climbed the stairs. Margaret followed. The second-floor hallway smelled faintly of old carpet and furniture polish. Room numbers passed. 208, 209, 210. Then, a section of wallpaper slightly darker than the rest. A door. 214. Daniel stopped. There was dust along the frame, but none on the handle. He noticed immediately. "Someone's been in here." Margaret shook her head. "No, there's no dust. I know." Daniel looked at her. Margaret held out the brass key. He didn't take it. "You open it." "I can't." "Why?" "My father tried once. And..." Margaret looked at the clean handle. The key stopped working for everyone except the guest. Daniel almost walked away. Then something clicked behind the door. A lock. Opening. By itself, the door moved inward 3 inches. Neither of them spoke. Daniel pushed it open. Room 214 did not look abandoned. That was the first thing he noticed. It looked occupied. A suitcase rested on a luggage stand. A dark coat hung near the door. A glass of water sat beside the bed. On the desk, a small lamp glowed warmly. Daniel stepped inside. Margaret remained in the hallway. "You left the lamp on." "No." Daniel touched the glass of water. Cold. Condensation ran down the side. He pulled his hand away. The bed was neatly made. A newspaper rested on the pillow. Daniel picked it up. The ASHBURY record. November 4th, 1996. The paper had yellowed with age. One article on the front page had been circled. Local hotel guest disappears without trace. Daniel read the first paragraph. A man identified as Daniel Cross had vanished from room 214 of the Bellweather Hotel. Age, 32. Daniel stopped. He was 32. He read further. The missing man was described as 6 feet tall. Brown hair. Scar beneath the left jaw. Daniel slowly touched the scar beneath his own jaw. He had gotten it at 17. A bicycle accident. Margaret watched from the doorway. Daniel whispered, "This article describes me." Then he saw the photograph. A grainy black and white image. Police standing outside the Bellweather. A car parked near the entrance. And in an upstairs window, room 214, a man looking down at the camera. Daniel. He dropped the newspaper. "No." Margaret stepped inside. Daniel backed away from her. "You knew?" "I knew there was a photograph." "You knew it was me. I was 9 years old when he disappeared." "You saw him?" Margaret didn't answer. Daniel moved closer. "Did you see the man who checked in?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Yes, and..." Margaret whispered, "You look exactly the same." The room seemed smaller. Daniel walked toward the suitcase. Margaret said, "Don't?" He opened it. Inside were folded clothes, shirts, trousers, socks, everything carefully packed. Daniel lifted one shirt, his size, his brand. Then he noticed a small tear near the cuff. He froze. Daniel was wearing the same shirt. He looked down at his sleeve. No tear. He looked at the shirt from the suitcase. Same pattern, same faded collar, same missing button near the bottom, except his own button was still there. He reached deeper into the suitcase. A wallet, brown leather. Daniel opened it. His driver's license, not an old version. His current photograph, his current address, his date of birth. Everything correct. Expiration date, 2029. Daniel stared at it. The wallet had supposedly been inside a locked room since 1996. He checked his pocket. His real wallet was still there. He placed them side by side. Identical, except the wallet from the suitcase contained something else. A hotel receipt. Bellweather Hotel, room 214. One night. At the bottom, balance due upon return. And beneath that, handwritten, "You came back too early." Daniel wanted to leave. Immediately, he grabbed his coat and walked toward the door. The hallway outside looked wrong. Margaret was gone. The lights were dimmer. The wallpaper had changed. Daniel stopped at the threshold. The brass sign across the hall read, "Ice." It hadn't been there before. He looked back into room 214. The room was unchanged. Then someone walked past the far end of the hallway. A man, dark coat. Daniel called out, "Hey!" The man stopped. Back turned. Daniel stepped into the hall. "Sir?" The man slowly looked over his shoulder. Daniel couldn't see his face clearly. But something about him felt familiar. The posture. The shoulders. The way he held his left hand. Daniel moved closer. The man walked around the corner. Daniel followed. The hallway ended. No stairs. No elevator. Only a window. Rain outside. Daniel looked down. The parking lot was full. Cars from another time. Boxy sedans. Old station wagons. A police cruiser with a light bar from the 1990s. Daniel stepped backward. Behind him, room 214 was gone. He ran. Doors passed on both sides. 215, 216, 217, then 214 again. Daniel stopped. The brass key was already in the lock. The door opened. Inside, a man sat at the desk, dark coat, back turned. Daniel couldn't move. The man spoke. "You shouldn't have opened the suitcase." Daniel recognized the voice. His own. The man turned. Older. Maybe 60. Same face. Same scar. Gray hair. Tired eyes. Daniel whispered, "Who are you?" The older man looked almost amused. "You know?" "No. You just don't know when." Daniel stepped backward. The older man said, "Close the door." Daniel didn't. "Who checked in here in 1996? The man looked at the old newspaper. "You did?" "I wasn't born. I know." "Then how?" The older Daniel looked toward the window. "I spent 30 years trying to answer that." Daniel's breathing changed. 30 years. The older man nodded. "For me." He pointed toward the hallway. "Not for them." Daniel looked outside. The corridor had changed again. Modern lights. Modern wallpaper. Margaret stood at the far end, frozen. She could not see the older man. Daniel turned back. The chair was empty. Only the dark coat remained. Margaret ran toward him. "Where were you?" Daniel looked at her. "What? You disappeared." "For how long?" She checked the clock on the wall. "Maybe 10 seconds." Daniel looked inside room 214. Empty. No older man, but something new rested on the desk. A photograph. Daniel picked it up. The Bellweather lobby, dated November 3rd, 1996. The younger Margaret stood behind the desk beside her father. And entering through the front doors, Daniel. Not the older version. Him. Exactly as he looked tonight. Same clothes. Same shoes. Same watch. Margaret whispered, "That's the night." Daniel flipped the photograph over. Handwriting. 9:43 p.m. He checked his phone. A photograph from 30 years ago showed him arriving at the exact time he had arrived tonight. Daniel looked closer. In the background of the photograph, behind the 1996 reception desk, hung a calendar. November 3rd, and beside the calendar stood another person, a woman, dark hair, holding a stack of newspapers. Daniel zoomed in. Margaret leaned closer. Neither spoke. The woman wore a gray jacket. At 10:31 p.m., Daniel called the Ashbury Record. No answer. He searched online. The newspaper still existed. Barely. Its archive went back more than a century. Daniel searched his own name. One result. November 4th, 1996. Olo Call hotel guest disappears without trace. He opened it. The article was different now. The description remained. Age 32. Brown hair. Scar beneath left jaw. But the final paragraph had changed. Daniel read it aloud. Hotel owner Henry Vale stated that the missing guest left one instruction before disappearing. Margaret moved closer. Daniel continued. Room 214 must remain untouched until November 3rd. He stopped. Margaret said, "What year?" Daniel looked at her. "Tonight." The room phone rang. Both of them jumped. Daniel stared at it. "One ring, 2, 3, he answered. "Hello?" The woman's voice, calm. Familiar somehow? "Mr. Cross?" "Yes." "This is the archive desk." Daniel looked at Margaret. "What archive?" "The Ashbury record." He tightened his grip. The woman continued, "I'm calling about the photograph you requested." "I didn't request a photograph." Silence. "Then you will." Daniel said nothing. The woman spoke again. "Please don't leave the hotel before midnight." "Why?" A pause. "Because that's not when you arrived." The line went dead. Daniel packed nothing. Took nothing. He walked out. Margaret followed him down the stairs. "Where are you going?" "Anywhere else." He crossed the lobby. The grandfather clock read 11:06. Daniel opened the front doors and stopped. The parking lot was gone. Outside stood the Bellweather Hotel. Another Bellweather. Across the street. Same building. Same windows. Same sign. Daniel looked back. He was still inside the original. Across the rain-soaked road, the second hotel lobby glowed warmly. A man entered through its doors. Daniel. Same clothes. Same bag. He watched himself approach the reception desk. A young girl stood behind it beside an older man. Margaret whispered, "My father." Daniel turned to her. She was staring across the street. At herself, 9 years old. The second hotel existed for only a few seconds. Then lightning flashed. It was gone. The parking lot returned. Daniel's car sat where he had left it. Neither of them spoke. Then the grandfather clock chimed. Once. The hands jumped backward. 9:43 p.m. The lobby doors opened behind Daniel. A man entered carrying a travel bag. Daniel Cross, a second Daniel. He looked tired. Wet from the rain, 32 years old. He approached the desk, looked at Margaret, and said, "I need a room." Daniel watched from across the lobby. The arriving man turned. For one moment, their eyes met. Then every light in the Bellweather went out. When they returned, only one Daniel remained. Margaret never said which one. Police reports from that night are incomplete. Hotel records show Daniel Cross checked into room 214 at 9:43 p.m. The year field is blank. His car was found outside the next morning. His wallet remained in the room. His suitcase was packed. And on the pillow, police found a copy of the Ashbury record. The newspaper was dated 30 years in the future. There was one photograph on the front page. Room 214. A man standing at the window. Older. Gray-haired. Waiting. The Bellweather Hotel closed 6 months later, but the building was never demolished, and according to county property records, room 214 still cannot be legally reassigned. Not because of a police investigation, not because of the missing guest, because the room is still occupied. The current reservation remains active. Guest, Daniel Cross. Arrival, November 3rd, 1996. Departure, blank. And once every year, at exactly 9:43 p.m., the lamp inside room 214 turns on. If you enjoy mysteries where the evidence refuses to fit into one timeline, subscribe to 10-Minute Mysteries. And if the woman in the gray jacket caught your attention, watch the previous story. A woman received photos from tomorrow's newspaper. Because Nora Bell found photographs of events before they happened. And 30 years earlier, someone who looked exactly like her was already standing inside the Bellweather Hotel. Which raises a much worse question. Was Nora documenting the future? Or had she been trapped inside it long before she ever received the first photograph? The staircase wasn't on the blueprints. That's what made Officer Leah Mercer stop. The old Ashbury police station had been under renovation for 3 weeks. Walls had been opened, flooring removed. Old pipes replaced. Nothing unusual. Until a demolition crew broke through a concrete wall beneath the evidence room. Behind it was a staircase. Not damaged. Not unfinished. A complete stairwell leading deeper underground. The construction foreman called Leah immediately. She arrived 20 minutes later. The workers stood silently around the opening. No one had gone down. Leah looked at the city blueprints. Basement level. Evidence storage. Boiler room, maintenance tunnels, nothing below. She looked back at the staircase. Concrete steps, steel handrail, fresh footprints in the dust. Only one direction. Up. Someone had walked out, not in. The chief arrived an hour later. The city engineer confirmed the impossible. According to every official record, the staircase shouldn't exist. The chief looked at Leah. "You first." She smiled nervously. "Of course." She switched on her flashlight. The air below felt strangely warm. Not humid. Just lived in. The stairs descended 30 steps before ending at another steel door. No rust. No damage. Someone had maintained it. Leah pushed. The door opened without resistance. The room beyond wasn't a basement. It was another police station. Same layout. Same reception desk. Same holding cells. Same interview rooms, only older. Everything looked frozen in time. Coffee cups still sat on desks. Typewriters remained loaded with paper. A wall calendar hung behind reception. April 14th, 1989. The clock above it had stopped. 10:13. Leah walked slowly through reception. Dust covered everything, except one thing. The floor. Someone had been walking here. Not recently. Regularly, the paths through the dust formed clear routes between rooms, as though one invisible employee had continued working for decades. She entered records. Thousands of case files filled old metal cabinets, each neatly labeled. She pulled one at random. Case 47-119. Missing person. The victim's name wasn't familiar. Neither was the address. Neither existed in Ashbury records. She opened another. Case 82004. Officer assault. Again, no matching names. No matching streets. Every case described places that didn't exist. Yet every report referenced Ashbury Police Department. Leah looked at the badge printed on the report. Something was different. Instead of reading Ashbury Police, it read Ashbury District B. District B. Ashbury had never been divided into districts. A shout echoed down the hallway. One of the construction workers had found the holding cells. Leah hurried over. Every cell was empty, except cell 4. Its door stood open. Inside, a neatly folded police blanket rested on the bed. Leah touched it, warm. She pulled her hand back immediately. One worker laughed nervously. "That's impossible." Nobody answered. Because everyone knew it was. On the wall inside cell 4, someone had scratched one sentence. "Don't let them build over the stairs again." Leah read it twice. Again? In the evidence room, rows of shelves stretched into darkness. Evidence boxes, weapons, photographs, tape reels. Everything cataloged. Nothing had been touched in years, until Leah noticed one box sitting alone on a desk. No dust. She opened it. Inside were dozens of photographs. Everyone showed the current Ashbury police station. Construction crews, police cars, officers. But something was wrong. Every photograph included the hidden staircase. Completely exposed. As if it had never been sealed. Leah stared. The oldest photograph was dated 1991. The staircase had supposedly been hidden behind concrete for over 30 years. Then how had someone photographed it? A technician discovered an old reel-to-reel recorder. The tape still worked. Leah pressed play. Static? Then a man's voice. "Detective Harris? The recording date, April 14th, 1989. Leah listened. "So, you say we're not the original station." Silence. Only the detective's breathing. "You expect me to believe someone built another station directly above ours?" More silence. The detective sounded irritated. "No, there aren't two Ashburys." Another pause. Then his voice changed. Confused. "Wait, paper shuffled? You're saying, long silence, we're District B." The tape crackled. The detective whispered one final sentence. They covered the wrong station. The recording ended. No prisoner's voice was ever heard. Leah searched deeper. Behind the chief's office, she found the original architectural drawings. She unrolled them carefully. The title read, Ashbury Municipal Complex, Below it, 2 floor plans, nearly identical. One labeled Police Station A, the other Police Station B. A red handwritten note crossed the page. After transfer, permanently seal staircase. Another note below it, smaller, almost hidden. Do not allow both stations to operate simultaneously. Leah stared. Transfer? Transfer what? No explanation. By evening, the mayor arrived. After only 5 minutes underground, he ordered the entire discovery sealed immediately. Construction stopped. Concrete trucks arrived before sunset. The official report released the following morning stated, "No additional underground structure was discovered during renovations. Every worker present signed a confidentiality agreement. No photographs were released. No recordings kept. The staircase disappeared beneath fresh concrete once again." 6 months later, Officer Ben Carter reported for his first day. Young, newly graduated. Assigned to evidence. While shelving paperwork, he noticed a cardboard box sitting alone on a desk. No label. Inside, 1 photograph. Construction workers standing around a newly opened staircase beneath the evidence room. Ben smiled. Someone had played a prank. Then he noticed the date. Tomorrow, he flipped the photograph over. 1 sentence had been written neatly across the back. "Thank you for reopening the station." Ben looked toward the concrete floor beneath his feet, then toward the evidence room door. He had never heard anything about a hidden staircase. Curious, he searched the building blueprints. Nothing. The basement ended exactly where he stood. That night, security cameras recorded Ben entering evidence at 9:12 p.m. He never appeared leaving. Police searched the station. No hidden rooms. No missing staircase. Nothing. The case remains unsolved. Officially, Officer Ben Carter disappeared inside Ashbury Police Station. Unofficially, maintenance workers still report hearing footsteps beneath the basement floor. Not random footsteps, a patrol, walking the same route. Reception, records, holding cells, evidence. Then back again. As though another police station is still operating beneath the one everyone knows. If you enjoy mysteries where every clue makes the impossible feel just a little more real, subscribe to 10-Minute Mysteries. And if today's story left you wondering who built the second station, watch The Hotel Room Had Been Waiting for Him for 30 years next. Because Daniel Cross discovered a room that had remained occupied across decades. This station may have done something even stranger. It may not have hidden a place. It may have hidden an entire version of history that was never supposed to exist. Evan Rhodes noticed things other people missed. A clock reflected backward in a window. A wedding ring removed before a family photograph. A shadow falling in the wrong direction. It was why he liked working alone in the basement archive of the Ashbury Historical Society. Old photographs never hurried him. They waited. Every morning, Evan descended the narrow staircase with a thermos of coffee, switched on the scanner, and spent 8 quiet hours restoring pieces of lives that had ended long before his began. He labeled every image carefully. Date, location, names, when known. Then he studied the faces for a few seconds before moving on. He liked imagining what happened immediately after the shutter clicked. Who laughed? Who looked away? Who never returned to that place again? On Monday morning, Archive Box District B-214 was waiting on his desk. Evan had never seen the label before. The cardboard was older than most of the collection, soft at the corners and darkened by moisture. A faded transfer stamp crossed the lid. Ashbury Police, District B Archives. Evan traced the words with one finger. Ashbury had never had police districts, at least, not officially. He made a note to ask the curator later. Then he opened the box. Inside were dozens of landscape photographs from Black Pine National Forest. Old trails, fire roads, logging camps, mountain ridges. Nothing unusual. Evan scanned the first image, then the second, then the third. By 11 o'clock, he had processed 47 nearly identical photographs of trees. He was reaching for the next one when the scanner software chimed. Face detected. Evan looked at the screen. The photograph showed a dirt trail winding along the northern ridge. No cabins, no hikers, no people. He leaned closer. The software had drawn 5 small boxes near the center of the image, all of them over empty forest. Not today, Evan muttered. The scanner occasionally mistook rocks or branches for faces. He cleared the detection and scanned the photograph again. The 5 boxes returned. Evan zoomed in. At first, he saw nothing. Then shapes emerged between the trees. 5 people. Tiny. Walking in single file. He adjusted the contrast. Bright synthetic jackets appeared against the faded green landscape. Modern jackets. Modern backpacks. One hiker had a yellow water bottle clipped to the side of her pack. Evan stopped breathing for a moment. He knew that bottle. Everyone in Ashbury knew it. It had appeared on missing person posters for almost a year. Emily Foster, age 29, last seen entering Black Pine National Forest with 4 friends. 5 hikers had disappeared on September 18th. The search had lasted 12 days. Helicopters, drones, tracking dogs, hundreds of volunteers. Nothing had been found. No campsite. No equipment. Not even a clear footprint. The photograph in front of Evan was dated July 1978. Emily Foster had not been born until 1995. Evan sat back slowly. Then he checked the original print. The date was written on the reverse in faded blue ink. July 14th, 1978, Northridge Trail. He scanned it again. The hikers remained. This time, one of them appeared to be looking toward the camera. Evan picked up his phone, then stopped. Who exactly was he supposed to call? The police? The newspaper? His supervisor, who already believed Evan spent too much time staring at dust. He looked again at the yellow bottle, then searched the Historical Society's digital files for the missing hiker case. The official photographs appeared immediately. Emily with the yellow bottle, Mark in a blue hiking jacket, Jason with an orange climbing helmet attached to his backpack, Olivia wearing a white cap, Noah carrying a red sleeping roll. The people in the 1978 photograph matched all 5 details. Evan called Detective Laura Hayes. She answered after 4 rings. Ashbury Police. My name is Evan Rhodes. I work at the Historical Society. Pause. What do you need? It's about the Black Pine hikers. The silence on the other end changed. Not longer. Heavier? That case is closed, Laura said. I found a photograph. So did half the internet? This one was taken in 1978, Laura exhaled slowly. Mr. Rhodes, I don't know what kind of joke. I know about Emily's bottle. Laura stopped. Evan continued. The yellow one? With the black climbing clip? Mark's jacket has a repaired tear near the left shoulder. Jason has the orange helmet. Noah's sleeping roll is tied incorrectly. How do you know that? They're in the photograph. Another long silence. Then Laura said, Don't send it to anyone. I wasn't planning to. Don't scan it again. Evan glanced at the scanner. Too late. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She arrived in 12. Laura Hayes looked nothing like Evan expected. No dramatic entrance. No trench coat. No impatient questions. She walked into the archive carrying a paper coffee cup and the exhaustion of someone who had not slept properly in months. She placed the cup beside the scanner. Show me? Evan turned the monitor toward her. Laura stared at the image. For several seconds, her expression didn't change. Then she leaned closer. That's Emily. Evan nodded. Laura pointed. That's Mark. Her finger moved. Jason. Olivia. Noah. She stopped at the 5th figure. Noah stood slightly behind the others. Even in the blurred image, his posture looked different. He wasn't walking with the group. He was facing the trees. Laura straightened. Where did this come from? Evan showed her the box. She read the faded transfer stamp. District B. You know what that means? No, but you've seen it before. Laura looked at him. He had guessed correctly. She lifted the photograph carefully by its edges. The paper feels right. That doesn't mean it is. No, but it means someone worked very hard to make it feel right. Evan glanced toward her. You don't believe it. I spent 12 days in that forest looking for 5 people who left no trace. I learned not to believe anything until someone proves it. She picked up her phone and called the department's forensic lab. By late afternoon, the results came back. The photographic paper was consistent with material manufactured in the 1970s. The chemical development process matched. No modern ink. No digital alteration. No evidence the figures had been added. Laura read the report twice, then set it down. Evan said quietly, So it's real. Laura looked back at the photograph. The paper is real. That's not the same thing. No. She picked up the archive box. We need to know whether there are more. They found the second photograph shortly before sunset. It was buried near the bottom of the box. Black pine forest. 1954. A wooden footbridge crossed a narrow stream. 5 hikers stood beside it, closer than before. The clothing matched again. So did the backpacks. This time, all 5 faced the camera. Emily wasn't smiling. Mark had one hand raised, palm outward, not waving. Warning. Laura sat down. During the original search, she had treated the disappearance like a puzzle that could be solved by covering enough ground. Search every trail, check every ravine, interview every witness. She had believed failure meant they had missed something. Now she wasn't sure the missing piece had existed at the time. Evan scanned the image. Laura immediately noticed the timestamp embedded in the catalog record. The photograph had been donated to the Historical Society in 1962. The donor was listed as Henry Vale. Laura frowned. Vale, you know the name? The family owned the Bellweather Hotel. Evan waited for more. Laura gave none. She turned back toward the archive box. Keep looking. The third photograph was dated 1931. A winter scene? Snow covered the ridge. The 5 hikers stood beneath bare trees. Their modern clothing looked even more impossible against the old landscape. Jason pointed toward something outside the frame. Olivia looked over her shoulder. Noah stood farther away from the group. Evan zoomed in. There was another person between the trees behind Noah, almost hidden. Long coat, face obscured. Laura said, "Can you sharpen that?" "I can sharpen what's there. I can't create detail." "Do it." Evan adjusted the image carefully. The coat became clearer. Gray. The figure's face remained unreadable. Laura watched him. "Does that mean something to you?" Evan shook his head. "Should it?" "No." She answered too quickly. They continued. 1912. The hikers stood on a rocky slope. Emily's hand rested on Mark's shoulder. Noah was now separated by several yards. The gray-coated figure stood closer to him. In the 1882 photograph, only 4 hikers remained with the group. Noah appeared far in the background, alone, facing the others. Laura lined the prints across the archive floor, oldest to newest. Evan stood above them. "They're moving." Laura nodded. "North." "No. Look at their positions." Evan crouched. "They're not just moving through the forest." He pointed from one photograph to the next. "They're getting closer to the photographer." Laura looked again. He was right. In each image, the hikers had advanced slightly toward the camera. Not enough to notice alone. Obvious when placed together. Laura said, "Where were these taken?" Evan checked the archive notes. Different trails. Different photographers. Different years. Then why did they all face the same direction? He pulled an old forest map from a drawer. They marked each location. North Ridge, Old Bridge, Logging Trail, Summit Path. The points formed a line. At the end stood one structure. Black Pine Fire Lookout, built in 1881. Closed in 1964. Laura stared at the map. That tower was searched. "You went there?" "Twice. Anything unusual?" "No." She folded the map. But that was before we knew what to look for. The original negatives were stored at the regional museum. Laura arranged access the next morning. The museum conservator, Samuel Pierce, met them in a climate-controlled room below the main gallery. He wore white gloves and spoke in a whisper, as if the glass plates could hear him. "You understand these cannot leave the table?" Laura nodded. Samuel opened a padded drawer. Inside lay the 1954 negative. He placed it beneath a light. The bridge appeared. The stream, the trees, no hikers. Evan leaned closer. "Where are they?" Samuel looked confused. "Who?" Laura placed the developed print beside the glass negative. Same bridge, same angle, same shadows. But the print contained 5 people. The negative did not. Samuel checked the identification numbers. They matched. He opened another drawer. 1931. Again, the negative showed an empty landscape. The developed print showed the hikers. Samuel removed his glasses. "That isn't possible." Evan looked at Laura. The photographs changed after development. Samuel said nothing. He placed both prints into a new archival sleeve. Then noticed writing on the back of the 1931 photograph. Faint pencil. Almost erased. He angled it toward the light. A sentence appeared. "They are not in the forest yet." Laura read it twice. "What does that mean?" Samuel shook his head. Evan asked, "Who wrote it?" The museum records listed the donor. Ashbury Record Photo Department, the newspaper had contributed hundreds of historical images before its archive was transferred. Laura examined the handwriting. It looked recent. Not faded, not aged. She turned the photograph over again. One of the hikers had moved. Mark's raised hand was now lowered. Samuel stepped away from the table. "I'm closing the room." Laura picked up the print. "You saw that?" "I saw enough." Laura and Evan returned to the Historical Society. By then, the story had leaked. Someone at the museum had posted anonymously about impossible photographs. Reporters called. Online forums began identifying the hikers from blurred screenshots. People drove toward Black Pine, hoping to find the tower. The park closed the northern trails before sunset. Laura received authorization for one final search. 6 people. Laura, Evan, 2 park rangers, a forensic photographer, and Samuel, who insisted the negatives should be compared at the location where the prints had been taken. The climb began at dawn. Evan was not an outdoorsman. He stepped carefully over roots and checked the trail map every few minutes. Laura moved faster, but frequently looked behind them. Not because she expected someone to follow. Because she had spent a year wondering whether the hikers had been close enough to hear the search teams calling their names. Halfway up the ridge, Evan stopped. A muddy footprint crossed the trail, fresh. The previous night had been dry. Another print appeared farther ahead, then another, bare feet, leading down from the tower. Ranger Cole crouched beside them. No tread, no shoe marks. Laura asked, "Human?" Cole hesitated. "Close enough." The footprints ended at a patch of stone. No tracks continued. Evan photographed them. When he checked the image, the footprints were gone. The camera showed clean rock. He looked down. They were still there. He didn't mention it. Not yet. The tower appeared through the trees at noon. Weathered wood, rusting stairs, windows dark with age. Laura stopped at the base. During the original search, she had climbed those stairs and found nothing. She remembered the empty room, dust, bird nests, an old table. Now, through the lower window, she could see picture frames covering the walls. "Those weren't there," she whispered. They climbed. The tower door stood unlocked. Inside, hundreds of photographs covered every surface. Large frames, small frames, black and white, sepia, color. Every image showed black pine forest. And every image contained the same 5 hikers. Evan moved slowly around the room. The progression was unmistakable. In photographs from the 1880s, the hikers were barely visible. In the 1920s, they stood closer. By the 1960s, they had reached the base of the tower. In the 1980s, they were climbing the stairs. Photograph dated 2003 showed Emily's hand on the door. Laura found one dated the day the hikers disappeared, September 18th. The tower interior appeared empty, except for 5 shadows cast across the floor. No people, only shadows. Samuel compared one print with its matching negative. The negative showed an empty room. The developed image showed the shadows. Evan noticed a clean shelf beside the window. No dust. An old leather camera bag rested there. Stamped into the cracked surface, property of the Ashbury record. Inside was a large format camera, a roll of undeveloped film, and one envelope. Laura opened it. A police evidence label had been attached decades earlier. Ashbury Police, District B case status. Transfer incomplete. Case number, no names. Only a time, 10:13. The tower's old wall clock clicked. Everyone turned. It had not been running when they entered. The hands now pointed to 10:12. Evan looked around the photographs. One frame hung alone near the door. Unlike the others, the paper looked new. The date beneath it was tomorrow. It showed the lookout tower from outside. 5 hikers stood at the entrance. Emily closest, her hand raised toward the door. Laura said, "Were they there when we came in?" "No," Evan answered. The wall clock moved. 10:13. 3 knocks sounded from outside. "Knock! Knock! Knock!" Nobody moved. Ranger Cole raised his radio. Only static. The knocks came again. Laura approached the door. Evan grabbed her sleeve. "Wait!" The photograph had changed. Emily's raised hand now rested against the wooden frame. Noah stood behind the others. The gray-jacketed figure stood beside him. Laura pulled the door open. The landing was empty. Forest below. Wind through the trees. Nothing else. Then Samuel whispered, "Laura." She turned. The photograph changed again. There were now 6 people outside the tower. The 5 hikers. And Laura. She stood beside Emily, looking inward. Laura stepped away from the frame. That wasn't there. Evan said, "We should leave?" A new photograph slipped from the old camera. Nobody had touched it. The paper moved slowly through the rollers. Evan lifted it before it hit the floor. The image developed in his hands. The tower interior, taken from the corner above them. All 6 investigators stood inside, but the photograph showed 7 people. Someone in a gray jacket stood behind Laura. Laura turned around. Nothing. In the photograph, a figure raised a camera. A flash filled the real tower. Every window went white. For 1 second, Evan heard voices. Not screaming, calling. 5 names repeated from somewhere far away. Emily, Mark, Jason, Olivia, Noah. Then silence returned. The tower was empty. Laura was gone. Her backpack remained on the floor. Her radio continued transmitting static. The new photograph in Evan's hands had changed. Laura now stood outside with the hikers. 6 people, all facing the camera. The gray-jacketed figure was gone. The search for Laura Hayes lasted 9 days. No footprints, no trail, no evidence she had left the tower. The historical photographs were transferred to federal storage. The lookout was sealed. The official report described an accidental disappearance during a restricted site investigation. No mention of the changing photographs. No mention of District B. No mention of the Ashbury record camera. 6 months later, a family returned from a camping trip near Blackpine. They mailed a roll of film to a small photo lab outside Ashbury. Most images were ordinary: trees, campfires, mountain views. One photograph showed the old lookout tower in the distance. The technician nearly skipped it. Then he noticed people standing outside. 6 figures, 5 missing hikers, and Detective Laura Hayes. He scanned the negative. The tower was empty. Only the developed print contained them. The technician increased the resolution. All 6 were looking directly toward the camera. Laura stood at the edge of the group, one hand raised. Pointing behind the photographer, the technician zoomed into the reflection on the camera lens. A person stood behind him. Gray jacket, face hidden, holding another camera. His coworker approached. "What did you find?" "I'm not sure." The technician turned over the envelope. A faded blue stamp marked the back. A. SHB UR Right Record Photo Department. His coworker frowned. "That newspaper still exists." "Barely." "No, I mean that logo." The technician looked at her. "What about it?" "They stopped using it 30 years ago." The overhead lights flickered. The printer beside them activated by itself. A single photograph slid into the tray. It showed the 2 technicians standing in the photo lab. Watching the image of the missing hikers, the photograph was dated tomorrow, and behind them, barely visible near the darkroom door, stood 7 people. The hikers? Laura. And someone wearing a gray jacket. The Black Pine lookout remains closed. The hikers remain missing. So does Laura Hayes. Every few years, a new photograph appears in the Ashbury Historical Society archives, always dated tomorrow, always showing the group somewhere new. A road, a hotel, a police station. Sometimes they're far in the background. Sometimes they're standing close enough to recognize. And in the most recent image, they are no longer looking toward the photographer. They are looking past them, as if something else has finally arrived. If you enjoy mysteries where the evidence becomes more impossible the longer you examine it, subscribe to 10-Minute Mysteries. Then, watch the previous story. They found a second basement under the police station, because the first photograph Evan discovered came from a box labeled District B. And beneath Ashbury Police Station, investigators found records from a district that officially never existed. One of those records may explain why the photographs keep changing, or it may explain who has been taking them. Maya Brooks could recognize fear before a caller said a single word. It was in the breath before the sentence. The silence after a question. The tiny change in someone's voice when they realized help might not arrive in time. For 12 years, Maya had answered emergency calls for Ashbury County. She had heard fires spreading through walls, drivers trapped beneath overturned cars, people hiding inside rooms while someone searched the hallway outside. She remembered most of the voices, but there was one call she had spent 6 years trying to forget. At 10:13 on a rainy October night, a woman had called from a roadside phone booth outside Ashbury. She gave no name, no location, Only one warning. The bridge will collapse tomorrow. Maya had asked which bridge. The woman replied, the one they already buried. Then the line went dead. The next afternoon, part of the old millstone bridge collapsed during repairs. 3 workers disappeared into the river. Only 2 were recovered. The phone company traced the call. It had come from a public phone booth on County Road 6. The booth had been disconnected since 1989. Maya resigned from dispatch 3 months later. She never told anyone the call had sounded familiar. The woman on the line had spoken with Maya's voice. 6 years later, Detective Owen Hale arrived at Maya's apartment carrying a cardboard evidence box. Rainwater darkened the shoulders of his coat. Maya left him standing in the hallway. I don't work for the county anymore. I know. Then why are you here? Owen lifted the box. Because the booth called again. Maya's hand remained on the door. Behind Owen, the elevator doors closed. The hallway became quiet. What did it predict? Owen studied her. I didn't say it predicted anything. It always does. That answer was enough. Maya opened the door. The evidence box contained cassette tapes, dispatch transcripts, maintenance records, and newspaper clippings dating back more than 40 years. Owen spread them across Maya's kitchen table. Every file carried the same phone number, 555-0147. The booth on County Road 6. The earliest recording was dated June 1989. A man called emergency services at 2:41 in the morning. Owen inserted the cassette into a portable player. Static filled the kitchen, then a frightened male voice. There's smoke coming from the school. The dispatcher asked which school. The man gave an address. Ashbury Central. The dispatcher said no alarm had been reported. The caller whispered, "It hasn't started yet." The recording ended. 23 hours later, an electrical fire destroyed the school gymnasium. No one died. The next recording came from 1996. A woman reported that a tanker truck would overturn near mile 87. The dispatcher asked whether she was witnessing an accident. The woman replied, "No." I'm remembering it early. The following night, a tanker overturned at mile 87. The road remained closed for 3 days. Maya looked at Owen. "Where did you get these?" "District Archive." "What district?" Owen hesitated. An old box marked District B. Maya stared at him. Ashbury had never officially had a District B, but she had heard the name before. Dispatch supervisors used to whisper about transferred calls that appeared without a source. Calls nobody was supposed to log. Maya picked up the next cassette. The label read, October 14th, 10:13 p.m. Her call. Owen reached for the player. "The new caller mentioned you." Maya looked up. "What did they say?" Owen removed a digital recorder from his pocket. He placed it on the table, then pressed play. A phone rang twice. A dispatcher answered. A woman breathed quietly on the line, then said, "Tell Maya the booth is open again." Maya's face tightened. The dispatcher asked who was calling. The woman replied, "She knows my voice." Maya reached over and stopped the recording. Owen said nothing. She stared at the recorder. "That's me." "You're sure?" "I spent 12 years listening to voices for a living." "It could be an imitation." "No." Maya looked toward the rain moving down her kitchen window. "It's me." County Road 6 ran north from Ashbury through an abandoned industrial corridor. The phone booth stood beside a closed patrol station, half hidden beneath overgrown trees. Or at least, it had stood there once. When Maya and Owen arrived, only the concrete base remained. 4 rusted bolts, a severed cable, broken glass in the weeds. Owen shone his flashlight over the ground. The county removed it in 2002. Then why did the call trace here? That's what I'm trying to understand. Maya crouched near the cable. The cut end looked wrong, not weathered. Fresh copper gleamed inside. This was cut recently. Owen touched it. No corrosion. A ringing sound came from the trees. Both of them froze. Old-fashioned. Mechanical. A telephone ringing somewhere beyond the road. Maya stood. The sound came again. Owen moved toward the tree line. Maya caught his sleeve. There's no booth. The ringing continued. 3 rings, then stopped. A red light blinked inside Owen's parked car. His radio. They hurried back. Dispatch was calling. Owen answered, "Hale." The dispatcher sounded confused. "We just received an emergency report from your location." Owen looked toward the empty concrete base. "What report?" "A vehicle collision." Maya looked up and down the empty road. No traffic. No headlights. The dispatcher continued. "Caller says a Black County sedan will strike the north barrier at 11:26. Owen checked his watch. 11:19. They had 7 minutes. Maya looked at Owen's car. Black County sedan. We leave it. Owen shook his head. That could be the mistake. What? If we move the car, we might cause it? If we stay, we might cause it. The road remained empty. 11:24. Rain intensified. Headlights appeared around the southern bend. A delivery truck, moving too fast. Owen stepped into the road and waved his flashlight. The truck driver braked. The rear wheels slid sideways. The truck missed Owen's sedan by inches, then struck the north barrier. Metal screamed. The driver survived. Maya stood in the rain watching steam rise from the truck's hood. Owen looked toward his untouched sedan. The call was wrong. Maya shook her head. No. She pointed at the county emblem on the damaged truck door. It was a contracted vehicle. Black beneath the company wrap. The county sedan converted for deliveries. The call had been exact. They had only misunderstood it. The truck driver remembered nothing unusual. He claimed his steering wheel had pulled toward the barrier by itself. Inside the cab, Owen found an old Polaroid photograph on the passenger floor. It showed the phone booth. Intact. A woman stood inside with the receiver held to her ear. Gray jacket, face hidden by reflected light. On the back, someone had written, "Tomorrow, 10:13. Maya studied the image." Where did this come from? The driver shook his head. I've never seen it. Owen sealed the photograph in an evidence sleeve. Maya noticed a faded stamp at the bottom. Ashbury Record Photo Department. She had seen that logo recently in the news. It had been connected to the investigation involving missing hikers and photographs that changed after development. Owen noticed her expression. You recognize it? Maybe. Maya looked toward the trees. But that newspaper stopped using this logo decades ago. The telephone began ringing again. This time the sound came from the concrete base. They turned. The phone booth was there, not appearing gradually, not emerging from darkness, simply present. Glass walls, metal frame, weak light glowing inside. The receiver vibrated on its hook. Owen whispered, that wasn't there. The booth looked older than the photographs. Rain moved across the glass, but the concrete beneath it remained dry. The phone rang again. Maya opened the door. Inside smelled like dust and electrical heat. The directory shelf held no phone book, only a folded map. Maya opened it. Ashbury County. Roads. Bridges. Municipal buildings. Several locations were circled in red. Mile 87. Bellweather Hotel. Ashbury Police Station. Black Pine Lookout, each connected by a thin line. At the bottom, stamped faintly, District B Maintenance Network. Owen said, this isn't a phone map. Maya touched one of the lines. It's a circuit. The phone rang inches from her hand. Owen said, don't answer. Maya looked at him. You came to me because I know the calls. I came because the caller knew you. That's why I have to answer. She lifted the receiver. No static. No breathing. Only Maya's own voice. Older. Tired. You came sooner this time. Maya gripped the phone. Who are you? You know? No, I don't. The voice sighed. You always say that? Owen leaned closer, trying to hear. Maya asked, what happens tomorrow? Her older voice replied, Owen answers the next call. Maya looked at him. The voice continued. Then the booth stops predicting disasters. Why? Because it won't need to. The line clicked dead. The booth light went out. Outside, Owen's phone began ringing. Caller ID, Maya Brooks. He looked at her. Her phone remained in her pocket. Don't answer? Maya said. The ringing stopped, then began again. Owen stared at the screen. What if it's you? It isn't. What if it will be? The call stopped. A voicemail notification appeared. Owen played it on speaker. Maya's voice whispered, the emergency is already inside the booth. They turned. Something had changed behind the glass. The phone was off the hook, swinging gently, but neither of them had left it that way. On the rear wall, condensation formed words. One call remaining. Owen stepped closer. The booth door slammed shut behind him. Maya grabbed the handle. Locked. Owen struck the glass. His voice was muted, as if he stood far away. The phone rang inside. He looked at Maya. She shook her head violently. Owen lifted the receiver. The moment it touched his ear, every streetlight along County Road 6 shut off. Darkness swallowed the road. Maya could see Owen through the booth's weak internal light. He listened. His expression changed. Confusion. Then recognition. Then fear. He looked directly at Maya. The booth phone slipped from his hand. The glass went black. Maya pulled harder on the door. It opened. The booth was empty. No Owen. No receiver. No folded map. Only one cassette tape resting on the metal shelf. A handwritten label. Maya Brooks. Final call. The booth light flickered. Then the entire structure vanished. The concrete base remained. 4 rusted bolts. Severed cable? Rainwater. Nothing else. Maya returned to dispatch before sunrise. The overnight supervisor allowed her into the archive room after she showed Owen's badge. They played the cassette together. The phone rang. Maya's younger voice answered. Ashbury Emergency Services. What is your location? Owen spoke on the other end. Calm. Far away. County Road 6. The dispatcher said no active line existed there. Owen replied, I know. What is your emergency? A pause. Then Owen said, tomorrow, Maya Brooks will reopen the phone booth. Maya leaned closer to the tape. The dispatcher asked why. Owen answered, because I'm still inside it. The timestamp read, June 1989. The first year, the impossible calls began. Maya sat motionless. Owen had not been alive in 1989. Neither had she. The supervisor checked the call database. A new incident had appeared. No dispatcher name. No receiving station. Only location. Black Pine National Forest. Scheduled time. Tomorrow, 10:13 p.m. Attached to the incident report was a photograph. 6 people stood outside an abandoned fire lookout. 5 missing hikers. Detective Laura Hayes. Behind them, inside the trees, Owen Hale held a telephone receiver to his ear. No phone booth was visible. Maya printed the report. At the bottom of the page, beneath the District B stamp, one sentence appeared. Call transfer complete. Maya Brooks disappeared the following night. Her apartment remained locked. Her car stayed parked outside. No evidence showed that she had left. But at exactly 10:13 p.m., Ashbury Emergency Services received a call from the disconnected number on County Road 6. A woman spoke calmly. She reported a missing dispatcher. The operator asked for the victim's name. The woman answered, Maya Brooks. Then she added, please tell her not to answer when Owen calls. The line remains disconnected. The booth remains gone, but emergency calls continue to arrive from its number. Always one day early. Always describing something that has not happened yet. And on rare nights, when the dispatcher asks who is calling, the answer is always the same. A woman's voice. Patient? Familiar? I'm the one who answered last time. If you enjoy mysteries where every clue seems to lead into another impossible case, subscribe to 10-Minute Mysteries. Then watch the previous story, The Missing Hikers Kept Appearing in Old Photographs. Because the final call from the Ashbury phone booth was traced to Black Pine National Forest. And in one photograph from that investigation, a man stood between the trees holding a telephone receiver. That man was Owen Hale. The photograph was taken decades before he was born, which means the booth may not have been predicting emergencies. It may have been placing the callers exactly where the next mystery needed them. Elias Mercer trusted timestamps more than people. People forgot. People exaggerated. People changed their stories after learning what everyone else had seen. Timestamp did none of those things. It told you where a file began, when it ended, whether it had been copied, edited, corrupted, or renamed. For 11 years, Elias had examined digital evidence for insurance companies and police departments across Ashbury County. Fraudulent fires, staged burglaries, employees caught stealing from warehouses. Most investigations became simple once the footage was recovered. Video did not care what anyone claimed had happened. It showed what happened. At least, that was what Elias believed before the Hawthorne Plaza fire. The shopping center had been empty for nearly a year. 3 boarded storefronts, a closed pharmacy, an old electronics shop, a supermarket that had never reopened after the roof began leaking. At 2:13 on a Monday morning, a fire started inside the maintenance corridor. By sunrise, half the plaza had been destroyed. The fire department suspected faulty wiring. The insurance company suspected arson. Detective Sarah Quinn suspected everyone. She arrived at Elias's laboratory carrying a black plastic evidence bag. Inside was a fire-damaged security recorder. Sarah placed it on his workbench. Tell me this survived. Elias examined the warped casing. The find survived. Can you recover the footage? Probably. That sounded confident. It was meant to. Sarah folded her arms. She was practical, impatient, and had little interest in technology unless it gave her a name she could question. Elias liked that about her. It prevented him from explaining things nobody had asked him to explain. He opened the recorder. The internal drive was scorched but intact. Give me 6 hours. Sarah looked at the clock. It's 9 in the morning. Then come back at 3. She picked up her coat. Call me sooner if you find someone carrying gasoline. Elias smiled faintly. Video rarely follows instructions. By 1:47 that afternoon, he had recovered 11 camera feeds. Parking lot. Loading dock. Supermarket entrance. Main hallway. Maintenance corridor. Most of the footage ended when power failed at 2:12 in the morning. One file did not. Elias opened it. Camera 14. Maintenance hallway. The timestamp appeared in the corner. Tuesday, 3:26 p.m. Elias checked the computer clock. Monday, 1:48 p.m. He assumed the recorder's date had been set incorrectly. That happened constantly. Power loss reset internal clocks. Cheap systems drifted. Employees entered the wrong year during installation. He opened the file metadata, created Tuesday, 3:26 p.m., modified Tuesday, 3:31 p.m. Duration, 5 minutes and 12 seconds. Tomorrow's date. Elias leaned back. Then he smiled. There was always an explanation. He checked the device logs. The internal clock had been correct on every other recovered file. He checked for tampering. No edits. No re-encoding. No copied segments. The file had been recorded directly by the damaged system. Tomorrow. Elias watched it. At first, nothing happened. The maintenance hallway appeared partly burned. Emergency lights glowed along the floor. At 3:27, 2 firefighters crossed the frame. At 3:28, a woman in a dark police coat stepped into view. Sarah Quinn. She crouched near an electrical panel. A second person joined her. Elias. He stopped the video. He had never been inside Hawthorne Plaza. Sarah had not yet returned. The footage continued. Tomorrow's version of Elias pointed toward the ceiling. Sarah said something the camera could not record. Then both moved out of frame. At the far end of the hallway, a person stood behind a locked security gate. Gray jacket, face hidden by shadow. The figure looked directly into the camera. Elias paused the file. For the first time that day, he stopped looking for a technical explanation. He called Sarah. She answered immediately. Tell me you found gasoline. I found us? A pause. What? In the footage. That doesn't make sense. No. When was it recorded? Elias looked at the timestamp. Tomorrow? Sarah arrived 14 minutes later. She watched the clip without speaking. When it ended, she replayed it. Then again. Finally, she pointed toward the figure behind the gate. Who's that? I don't know. Can you identify them? Not from this resolution. What about the date? The system clock is correct. Can someone fake the metadata? Yes. Did they? No. Sarah looked at him. You said that very quickly? I checked 3 times. She watched herself enter the hallway again. That's the coat I'm wearing now. Elias nodded. She looked toward his chair. And that's your jacket? Yes. We could choose not to go. We could... Sarah paused the video at 3:28. Then we learned nothing. Elias said, or we learn whether the footage predicts decisions. Sarah looked at the gray-jacketed figure. Tomorrow, 3 o'clock. The following afternoon, they entered Hawthorne Plaza. Sarah wore a different coat. Elias left his usual jacket in the car. Neither mentioned it. The shopping center smelled of wet plaster, smoke, and burned insulation. Investigators moved through the ruined storefronts. At 3:21, Elias checked his watch. They reached the maintenance corridor. The same emergency lights glowed along the floor. The same security gate stood at the far end. Locked. Sarah crouched beside the electrical panel. Exactly as shown in the footage. Elias stared at her. She noticed, I'm checking the fire damage. You said that in the video. You couldn't hear the video? No. Sarah stood. You're trying to make it fit. Then, something cracked above them. Elias pointed toward the ceiling. A loose panel hung from one corner. His gesture matched the recording exactly. Sarah looked at the ceiling, then at him. Neither moved. 2 firefighters passed behind them at 3:27, exactly on time. Sarah's radio sounded. She turned away. Elias looked toward the gate. Someone stood behind it. Gray jacket, motionless. Sarah, she turned. The hallway beyond the gate should have been empty. It ended at a sealed utility room, but the figure stood 20 feet inside. Sarah drew her flashlight. Police? Stay where you are. The figure slowly raised one hand, not surrendering, pointing upward, toward camera 14. Then the lights failed. Darkness filled the corridor. Sarah's flashlight came on. The figure was gone. The gate remained locked. No doors, no open vents, no place to hide. Elias checked his watch. 3:31. The recovered video ended at exactly that time. Back at the laboratory, the file had changed. Elias noticed immediately. Its duration was now 6 minutes and 3 seconds. 51 seconds longer than before. Sarah stood behind him. Did you save another copy? No. He played the new section. After the lights failed, the camera continued recording in infrared. Elias and Sarah stood in darkness outside the gate. Behind them, the gray-jacketed figure appeared. Not inside the locked hallway. Standing inches behind Elias, it leaned toward his ear. Then every camera in the plaza switched on simultaneously. The screen divided into 14 feeds. Parking lot, loading dock, storefronts, corridors. On every camera, the same gray-jacketed figure stood in a different location, always facing the lens. Sarah whispered, "That's impossible." Elias advanced frame by frame. Camera 1, figure in the parking lot. Camera 2, figure beside the loading dock. Camera 3, figure inside the burned pharmacy, all captured at the same second. Then camera 12 showed something else. A public phone booth standing inside the abandoned supermarket. Elias froze the frame. Sarah leaned closer. There wasn't a phone booth there. No. The receiver hung off the hook. On the glass, written through condensation, County Road 6. Sarah looked at Elias. That's the booth from the missing dispatcher case. He knew the case. Everyone in Ashbury had heard parts of it. A disconnected roadside phone had predicted emergencies before they occurred. A detective had disappeared. Then a former dispatcher vanished the following night. Elias opened the file directory. A folder had appeared beneath the recovered camera feeds. It had not existed the day before. District B. Inside were 5 video files. No extensions. No thumbnails. Only locations. Mile 87. Bellweather. Black Pine. County Road 6. Hawthorne Plaza. Open it, the last one. Open it. The Hawthorne file showed the security office where they were currently standing. Live? Elias sat at the computer. Sarah stood behind him. The camera angle came from the upper corner of the room. There was no camera there. Elias looked up. Bare ceiling? He looked back at the screen. On the live feed, someone stood outside the office door. Gray jacket. Sarah opened the real door. The corridor was empty. On screen, the figure remained. It lifted one hand and knocked, 3 times. The real office door knocked behind Sarah. She spun around. Nobody. Elias paused the footage. The on-screen figure stopped moving. He pressed play. It lowered its hand. Sarah said, "Don't pause it again." Why? Because it noticed. Elias watched the playback cursor. The footage was no longer live. The timestamp read, tomorrow, 10:13 p.m. The video showed Elias alone in the security office. Sarah was gone. He sat at the computer watching the same file. Behind him, the door slowly opened. The gray-jacketed figure entered. It carried an old telephone receiver in one hand. Elias's future self did not turn around. The figure placed the receiver beside the keyboard, then pointed toward the monitor. The picture zoomed into the screen within the screen, again and again, an endless corridor of Elias watching himself. Deep inside the repeated image, something moved. A group of people. 5 hikers, a woman Elias recognized from the news as Detective Laura Hayes, a man holding a telephone receiver, Owen Hale. They stood inside the maintenance hallway, waiting behind the locked gate. Sarah whispered, "These cases aren't connected by records." Elias looked at her. "They're connected by cameras." "No." She pointed toward the screen. "They're connected by whoever keeps recording them." A sound came from beneath the desk. A telephone ringing. Elias crouched. No phone. The ringing continued inside the recovered security recorder. He unplugged it. The sound continued. Sarah stepped away. The computer screen changed. A call transcript appeared. Caller: Elias Mercer. Time: tomorrow, 10:13 p.m. Emergency: witness still watching. Elias read it aloud. What witness? The office lights flickered. Sarah looked toward the dark monitor reflection. Elias. He saw it. In the reflection, the gray-jacketed figure stood behind them. In the real room, nobody was there. Elias turned back to the screen. The figure removed its hood. The image distorted before the face appeared. Every camera feed went black. Then one sentence appeared: recording requires an observer. Sarah said, "Shut it down." Elias reached for the power switch. The screen changed again. Tomorrow's footage showed Sarah outside Hawthorne Plaza, speaking with officers. Alone. Elias was absent. A body bag was carried from the building. Sarah saw it too. If we leave now, does that stop it? Elias looked toward the unplugged recorder. Or cause it? The phone rang one final time. This time, a handset lay beside the keyboard. Neither had seen it appear. Old black plastic. Frayed cord ending in nothing. Sarah said, "Don't answer." Elias picked it up. His own voice spoke from the receiver. "You're not watching tomorrow." Elias gripped the phone. "What am I watching?" "The last recording." "Last recording of what?" The voice answered, "You." The computer monitor switched off. The room went completely dark. Sarah called Elias's name. He felt her hand grip his arm. Then the infrared monitor returned. The office appeared empty. "No, Elias." "No, Sarah." Only the chair moving slightly. On screen, the gray-jacketed figure entered and sat at the computer. It looked directly into the impossible camera above the room. Then reached forward and stopped the recording. Police found Sarah Quinn outside Hawthorne Plaza at 10:19 that night. She could not explain how she had left the security office. She remembered darkness, a telephone ringing, then waking in the parking lot. Elias Mercer was never found. The damaged security recorder disappeared from evidence. No camera existed inside the office. But the recovered files remained on the laboratory server. One new file appears every morning. Always dated tomorrow. Always 5 minutes long. Most show empty rooms, abandoned roads, hotel corridors, the Black Pine Lookout, the empty concrete base on County Road 6. But sometimes Elias appears. Standing at the edge of the frame, watching something outside the camera's view. In the most recent recording, he is inside Hawthorne Plaza's maintenance hallway. The 5 hikers stand beside him. Laura Hayes, Owen Hale, Maya Brooks, all facing the locked security gate. On the other side stands a person in a gray jacket, holding a camera. At exactly 10:13, the figure looks into the lens and raises one finger. Then the screen displays a message: "Next file recording." If you enjoy mysteries where the evidence seems to be watching you back, subscribe to 10-Minute Mysteries. Then watch the previous story. Every emergency call came from the same abandoned phone booth, because one hidden camera inside Hawthorne Plaza recorded that impossible phone booth after the county removed it, and the District B folder connected the booth to every other case Elias found. The calls may have predicted where people would disappear, but the cameras reveal something worse. Someone was already there, waiting to record their arrival. Arthur Bell believed everything belonged somewhere. Keys belonged on hooks. Evidence belonged in numbered containers. Lost property belonged on the correct shelf, under the correct date, with paperwork explaining exactly how it arrived. For 16 years, Arthur had managed the Ashbury Municipal Property Warehouse. He could locate a wedding ring surrendered in 2009 without checking the database. He remembered which shelf held 3 boxes of unclaimed cameras from the Hawthorne Plaza fire. He could tell when someone moved an item by half an inch. Order made sense to him. It meant nothing truly disappeared. It only waited to be found. Then there was the suitcase. It sat on shelf 43 beneath a fluorescent light that flickered every 11 seconds. Old leather, brass corners, 2 silver latches. No brand, no luggage tag, no inventory number. Arthur had passed it every morning for 6 years. He had never touched it. The handwritten card attached to the shelf contained only 4 words. Do not open? Hold indefinitely. Arthur hated that card, not because it frightened him, because it explained nothing. On Monday morning, a city auditor noticed it too. Her name was Iris Bennett. She wore a gray wool coat, carried 3 sharpened pencils, and had the unsettling habit of reading documents silently before greeting anyone in the room. She stood beneath shelf 43 with her clipboard. What's inside? Arthur continued counting sealed evidence bags. No one knows. Why? It's locked. Do you have the key? No. Who owns it? No record. Iris looked at him. You've stored an unidentified suitcase for how long? Arthur checked the faded card. 43 years. She lowered her clipboard. 43? It arrived in 1983. From where? No receiving form? Who approved indefinite storage? No signature. Iris stared at the suitcase. Arthur knew that look. It was the look people gave paperwork when they believed persistence could force it to become logical. She reached toward the handle. Arthur said, "Don't." Her hand stopped. Iris glanced at him. You don't know what's inside. No. Then why shouldn't I touch it? Arthur looked toward the warehouse office. Through the glass window, the security cameras showed every aisle. No one else was nearby. He lowered his voice. Because the last person who opened it disappeared. Iris almost smiled. Then she realized Arthur wasn't joking. Who? Martin Cole? Inventory supervisor. When? 2015? What happened? He opened it during an audit. The following morning, his car was still outside. His coat was hanging in the office. The warehouse camera showed him entering aisle 4. Arthur nodded toward the suitcase. They never showed him leaving. Was there an investigation? Yes, and? No evidence of a crime. Iris looked at shelf 43. The suitcase, locked again. She studied him. You're telling me it closed itself. I'm telling you nobody admitted closing it. Iris wrote something on her clipboard. Arthur frowned. What did you write? That you believe municipal property is causing disappearances. I said people disappeared after opening it. That distinction matters to you? Yes, it shouldn't. She turned toward the office. I want every record connected to this item. Arthur watched her walk away. The light above shelf 43 flickered. 11 seconds later, it flickered again. The suitcase had moved. Only slightly. Its handle had been lying flat. Now it stood upright. Arthur stared at it, then checked the aisle camera. On the monitor, the handle remained flat. He looked back through the office window. Upright. Monitor, flat. Arthur called Iris over. She compared the screen to the real shelf. That's a frozen frame. It isn't. Arthur waved his hand beneath the camera. On screen, his hand moved normally. Only the suitcase appeared unchanged. Iris walked closer to the monitor. What time did the handle move? I don't know. You were watching it. I was watching you? That isn't an answer. Arthur pulled the surveillance timeline backward. At 9:42, the handle lay flat. At 9:43, it still lay flat. At 9:44, flat. In the warehouse, it remained upright. Iris returned to shelf 43 and placed a pencil beside the suitcase. Don't touch it, Arthur said. I'm not touching it. She aligned the pencil with the shelf edge. We'll know if anything moves. By lunchtime, they had located the oldest surviving record. A yellowed property receipt dated November 3rd, 1983. Item, 1 leather suitcase. Recovered location, Bellweather Hotel. Room, 214. Arthur looked at Iris. That room again. You know it? Everybody in records knows it? The guest disappeared. Daniel Cross. Arthur glanced at her. You've read the file? I've read every unresolved property transfer in Ashbury. The receipt carried a second stamp beneath the hotel name. District B, transfer incomplete. Iris ran one finger over the paper. I've seen this stamp before. Where? Cases that officially don't exist. Arthur waited for her to explain. She didn't. He turned the receipt over. A handwritten note filled the back. Do not inventory contents. Weight must be recorded daily. Arthur opened the warehouse database. No daily weights existed. But inside an old paper ledger, they found them. 1983, 23 kilograms. 1984, 11. 1986, 38. 1991, 6. 1998, 62. 2002, 0. The weight changed constantly, sometimes by dozens of kilograms overnight. Arthur wheeled an industrial scale beneath shelf 43. He and Iris lifted the suitcase together. It felt almost empty. The scale settled at 18.4 kilograms. Iris recorded it. Arthur secured the aisle and placed a motion seal across both latches. At 2:13, the warehouse lights flickered. The scale display changed. 18.4, 21.7, 34.2, then 0.0. The suitcase remained on the platform. Arthur pressed one hand against it. It was still there. The display rose again. 47.9. Iris stepped closer. Something inside is moving. No. How can you know? The center of weight hasn't shifted. She looked at him. You can tell that? I've moved enough lost luggage. The display stopped at 43.0 kilograms. A soft click came from one latch. The motion seal remained unbroken. Arthur crouched. The left latch had opened beneath it. Iris said, "We need the police." Arthur nodded. Then the right latch clicked. The suitcase opened 1 inch. Cold air escaped through the gap. Not warehouse air. It smelled like rain, wet pavement, and something electrical, like the air after lightning. Arthur reached for the lid. Iris caught his wrist. "You just warned me not to touch it. We need to know what's inside." That is exactly what everyone who disappeared probably said. Arthur looked at the open gap. Something pale rested just beneath the lid. Paper. Not clothing. He put on evidence gloves, then raised the suitcase carefully. Inside were luggage tags, dozens of them. Old airline tags, train baggage slips, hotel claim tickets, handwritten paper labels tied with string. Nothing else. No lining, no hidden compartment. Just tags? Iris lifted the first one. Martin Cole. Destination, Ashbury Property Warehouse. Departure, November 14th, 2015, the day he disappeared. Arthur selected another. Helen Ward. She had managed municipal evidence in 1997. Her disappearance had never been solved. Another tag. Officer Ben Carter. Arthur knew the name from the Ashbury police station case. The rookie who entered the evidence room and never came back. Iris spread the tags across the table. Each belonged to someone who had vanished. Maya Brooks. Owen Hale. Laura Hayes. Elias Mercer. Some Arthur recognized. Others he didn't. One tag carried no name. Only a departure field. Tomorrow, 10:13 p.m. Iris picked it up by the string. The paper looked blank. Then faint letters began forming. Slowly, like an image appearing in developer fluid. ART Arthur stepped away. The name continued, Arthur Bell. Iris dropped it. The tag landed on the floor. The ink kept developing. Destination, District B. Arthur closed the suitcase. Both latches locked immediately. The motion seal remained unbroken. Neither spoke for several seconds. Then Iris said, "We remove it from the building." Arthur shook his head. "No, it just printed your name. That's why it stays here." "Why? Every transfer record ends with someone disappearing. And leaving it here is safer?" Arthur looked at the tag spread across the table. "I don't know." That evening, Iris ordered the warehouse sealed. No one entered or left without signing a log. 2 officers guarded the main doors. Arthur remained in the security office, watching shelf 43 across 4 camera angles. At 8:30, the suitcase sat exactly where they had returned it. At 9 o'clock, the same. At 9:46, Iris entered with coffee. "You should go home?" Arthur kept watching the monitors. "My name is inside it?" "That doesn't make staying beside it sensible. You're still here. I don't have a name tag." Yet, Iris placed the coffee beside him. On camera 3, the suitcase appeared on shelf 43. On camera 4, filmed from the opposite aisle, the shelf was empty. Arthur leaned forward. "Look." Iris compared the feeds. Same aisle, same timestamp. One camera showed the suitcase, the other did not. Arthur switched to the live warehouse view through the office window. Shelf 43 was empty. He stood. The office door was still locked. A soft scrape came from behind them. The suitcase sat beneath the security monitors. Neither had heard it arrive. Iris drew her service weapon. Arthur said, "Don't. I'm not shooting luggage." "Then what are you doing?" "Trying to feel less ridiculous." A new baggage label had appeared around the handle. A modern airline tag. Flight AB-214. Origin, Hawthorne Plaza. Destination, Ashbury Municipal Property Warehouse. Arrival, tomorrow. Iris photographed it. The image on her phone showed no suitcase. Only an empty floor. She tried again. Empty. Arthur looked at the monitors. Every feed now showed a different location. The Bellweather Hotel lobby. The hidden basement beneath Ashbury Police Station. The roadside phone booth on County Road 6. The security office at Hawthorne Plaza. Each location was empty. Each contained the same suitcase. Then all 4 timestamps changed. 10:12 p.m. Arthur checked the wall clock. 10:12. The suitcase latches clicked. Iris aimed her flashlight toward it. The lid opened. There were no tags inside now. Only darkness. Not the dark interior of an empty suitcase. Depth. A corridor stretching farther than the suitcase could physically contain. Rows of fluorescent lights disappeared into the distance. Along both sides stood shelves. Thousands of suitcases. Arthur leaned closer despite himself. Each had a label. Names. Dates. Destinations. He saw shelf 43 deep inside. The same shelf they'd been standing beside all day. On it sat another version of the suitcase. Open. Inside that suitcase was another corridor. Iris whispered, "Close it." Arthur reached for the lid. The telephone began ringing somewhere inside the impossible corridor. Recorded from above. The timestamp read, tomorrow, 10:13 p.m. On screen, Arthur reached inside. In the real office, he had not moved. Iris saw it too. Step away. Tomorrow's Arthur lifted a luggage tag from the darkness. The real Arthur kept both hands at his sides. On screen, the tag read, Iris Bennett. Iris stared. The blank tag on the office floor began developing again. Her name appeared beside Arthur's. The wall clock changed. 10:13. Every warehouse light went out. The emergency lights activated. Red. Dim. The suitcase remained open. From somewhere inside came the sound of wheels rolling across tile. Closer. Closer. A suitcase moved through the impossible corridor toward the opening. Not carried, not pulled. Rolling by itself. It stopped just beneath the lid. A hand emerged from the darkness. Human. Pale. Wearing an evidence glove. It held a luggage tag. Arthur stepped backward. The hand placed the tag on the office floor, then withdrew. The suitcase slammed shut. The lights returned. Iris picked up the tag. Passenger, Arthur Bell. Destination, unclaimed. Departure, completed. Arthur was gone. No flash, no sound. Mintu stood beside her. 1 moment he stood beside her. Okay? Arthur was gone. No flash, no sound. 1 moment he stood the next. The office contained only his coffee, his chair, and the indentation his shoes had left in the dusty floor. The officers outside heard Iris shout. They entered within seconds. The suitcase was locked. Shelf 43 was empty. Every security camera showed Arthur leaving the warehouse at 6:02 p.m. Hours before his disappearance, his car was gone. His employee records had changed. According to the city, Arthur Bell had retired 3 years earlier. Iris was the only person who remembered speaking to him that night. She ordered the suitcase transferred to police evidence. The transport vehicle arrived at 11:40. When officers opened the warehouse, shelf 43 was no longer empty. The suitcase had returned. A new handwritten card hung beneath it. Do not open. Hold indefinitely. No one remembered writing it. Iris checked the contents one final time without opening the case. She weighed it. 18.4 kilograms. Arthur's original measurement. Then she examined the security archive. One file had appeared overnight. Hawthorne Plaza. Camera 14. Recorded the previous day. The footage showed the burned maintenance corridor. At 10:13 p.m., the gray-jacketed figure entered carrying the suitcase. The figure placed it beneath the camera. Then looked directly into the lens. It raised one finger. Wait. A second person entered the frame. Arthur Bell. He carried a clipboard. He appeared confused. The gray-jacketed figure handed him a luggage tag. Arthur read it, then followed the figure through a doorway that did not exist in the real corridor. The suitcase remained behind. 24 hours later, it appeared inside the Ashbury warehouse. No one delivered it. No vehicle entered. No camera recorded its arrival. Arthur Bell remains missing. Iris Bennett resigned from municipal auditing 2 weeks later. Before leaving, she copied every known suitcase record. the earliest was not from 1983. Inside the District B file, she found a photograph dated 1954. It showed shelf 43 inside a warehouse that had not yet been built. The suitcase sat beneath the same flickering light. Beside it stood a man holding a clipboard. Arthur. He looked directly toward the photographer. A luggage tag hung from his coat. On the back of the photograph, someone had written, "Everything belongs somewhere." The suitcase remains in storage. Its weight changes daily. New travel stickers continue appearing across its surface. Some belong to airlines that no longer exist. Others list flights that have not yet departed. One appeared last week. Origin: Ashbury. Destination: Black Pine Lookout. Passenger count: 7. And tied beneath the handle was one blank luggage tag. The ink had already begun to develop. If you enjoy mysteries where ordinary objects carry evidence from impossible places, subscribe to 10-Minute Mysteries. Then watch the previous story. The last security camera footage was recorded tomorrow, because investigators reviewed every camera inside the property warehouse. None recorded the suitcase arriving. But one recovered file from Hawthorne Plaza showed it already waiting beneath camera 14, 24 hours before Arthur ever opened it. The cameras may not have been recording tomorrow. They may have been documenting where the suitcase would deliver its next passenger. The first person to hear WARB 103.7 again was driving alone. His name was Michael Renner. At 1:08 on a Wednesday morning, Michael was taking Briar Road home after finishing a late shift at the Ashbury paper mill. The highway was empty. No rain, no fog, nothing unusual. Then his car radio changed stations by itself. The music disappeared. Static filled the speakers. Michael reached toward the dial. Before he touched it, a man's voice came through. Warm, calm. The kind of voice late-night radio hosts used when they knew almost everyone listening was alone. "Good morning, Ashbury." Michael stopped reaching. The announcer continued. "You're listening to WARB 103.7. Michael laughed. "That's impossible." WARB had been gone for 30 years. Everybody who grew up in Ashbury knew the story. The station had closed in 1996 after its overnight host disappeared during a live broadcast. The building was abandoned. The transmission tower was dismantled. The frequency had been unused ever since. Michael reached for the volume. The announcer spoke again. And to the gentleman driving north on Briar Road, Michael's hand stopped. "You can leave the volume where it is." He stared through the windshield. Nothing ahead. Nothing behind. The voice continued. "You've got 6 minutes until you reach the old rail crossing." Michael slowed. "Very funny. You should probably keep moving." Michael looked at the radio. The display simply read 103.7. Then the announcer said, "And Michael?" Every muscle in his shoulders tightened. "Don't turn around." Michael looked into the rearview mirror. Empty back seat. The announcer chuckled softly. "I told you not to." Michael slammed the radio off. The display went black. The voice continued through the speakers anyway. "You never were very good at listening." Michael pulled onto the shoulder. He opened the driver's door. The broadcast stopped. Silence. Michael stood beside the car for nearly a minute. Then he heard something inside. A person breathing. From the back seat, he turned. Nobody was there. His radio came back on. The announcer said, "Thanks for listening." Then 103.7 disappeared into static. By noon, the recording was online. Michael had captured the last 30 seconds on his phone. Most people called it fake. A marketing stunt? A creepy podcast. Noah Vance listened to it 11 times. Then he drove to Ashbury FM and asked to see Lena Ortiz. Lena was halfway through recording an afternoon promo when Noah walked into the studio holding his phone. She recognized him immediately. "Noah Vance," he stopped. "You know me? I know radio engineers. You people all look like you've been personally betrayed by electrical wiring." Noah almost smiled. Lena pointed toward the chair across from her. "What broke? WARB?" Her expression changed. "That's not funny. I wasn't trying to be." He played Michael's recording. Lena listened once, then leaned toward the speakers. "Play it again." Noah did. She closed her eyes. "That's analog compression, I know." "Could be simulated?" "Yes, but the background carrier isn't?" Lena looked at him. "You checked?" "Frequency trace. Harmonics. Signal distortion. Whoever made this didn't just record a fake old broadcast. They transmitted it. From where?" "That's why I'm here." Lena leaned back. "WARB's tower is gone." "I know. The transmitter was stripped. I know. The license expired before I finished elementary school. I know. You say I know a lot? It saves time. That got a smile. Then Lena noticed Noah wasn't smiling back. You've got history with that station? Noah looked toward the studio glass. My father worked there. What did he do? Chief engineer. Lena stopped joking. Was he there the night it closed? Noah nodded. He never came home. At 12:58 the following morning, they sat inside Lena's broadcast booth waiting. Noah had connected a spectrum analyzer directly to the antenna feed. If something appears on 103.7, we'll know exactly how strong it is. Lena adjusted her headphones. And if nothing happens, I go home? You don't look like someone who's going home. Noah watched the clock. 12:59. 1 minute passed. Nothing. Then every meter on Noah's analyzer jumped. Lena whispered, "That's impossible. 103.7 appeared at full strength. Not weak. Not distant." Stronger than Ashbury FM's own transmitter, Lena slowly turned the monitoring receiver. Static, then music. An old jazz recording. Noah recognized it. "That's from 1996. How do you know?" My father played it constantly. The song faded. A man's voice entered. WARB 103.7. Ashbury after midnight. Noah went completely still. Lena looked at him. That him? Noah nodded. His father? David Vance. 30 years younger? Exactly as Noah remembered him? The host continued with the weather report. Temperature. Wind. Road conditions. Then, and if Noah is listening, Noah pulled off one headphone. Lena stared at him. The voice repeated, "Noah." He put the headphones back on. His father's voice softened. "If you're hearing this," they turned the transmitter back on. Noah leaned toward the microphone instinctively. "Dad." The broadcast continued as if he hadn't spoken. "Don't come looking for me?" Then static swallowed the signal. The analyzer dropped to 0. Lena said nothing. Noah stared at the receiver. Finally, where was it coming from? He checked the trace, then checked it again. That's the problem. What? It wasn't coming from anywhere. The next day, Lena started collecting listener recordings. Dozens arrived. People across Ashbury had heard WAR, but the station wasn't broadcasting the same program to everyone. One recording contained a woman arguing with her brother. The conversation had happened inside her kitchen while she was listening. Another listener heard his own voicemail before anyone had left it. A retired teacher recorded 60 seconds of herself sleeping. Her radio was downstairs. Her bedroom was upstairs. No microphone anywhere near her. Noah listened carefully to each one. They aren't rebroadcasting recordings. Lena looked across the desk. Then what are they doing? They're broadcasting sources. What's the difference? Someone isn't playing back a conversation from your house? He pointed at the waveform. They're carrying the sound live. Through what? Noah didn't answer. One file remained. Lena clicked it. Child's voice said, "Mom?" Then footsteps. A door opening. Then an adult whispered, "Who put that suitcase here?" Noah immediately stopped playback. Lena looked at him. What? Play the last part. She did. A latch clicked. Noah had heard that sound before. Ashbury News had covered the municipal warehouse disappearance. Arthur Bell. The locked suitcase. Shelf 43. That's from the property warehouse. Lena frowned. No radios in there? No public ones? How do you know? Because I designed part of the warehouse communication system. Lena stared at him. That feels like information you could have mentioned. The building wasn't supposed to matter. Everything in Ashbury apparently matters. That night, they went to WARB. The station sat behind a rusted fence on the eastern edge of town. The sign still clung to the brick wall. WARB 103.7. 3 windows boarded. 1 broken. Noah had not been there since he was 9. He stood at the gate longer than Lena expected. You okay? My father used to let me sit in the control room Sundays. You don't have to go inside. Yes, I do. The front door opened with almost no resistance. Inside smelled of dust, damp carpet, and old electronics. The lobby walls were covered with faded promotional posters. Lena illuminated one with her flashlight. A smiling radio team, she pointed. Your dad? Noah nodded. David Vance stood beside the overnight host, both smiling. Behind them hung a clock. 10:13. Noah looked away. They entered Studio A. The equipment had been gutted. No mixing console, no working microphone, no power, no transmitter. Lena tapped the wall switch. Nothing. So what exactly is broadcasting? Noah stepped behind the old equipment rack. Not this. A red light illuminated above the studio window. On AR. Both of them froze. Lena whispered, "We don't have electricity." From somewhere behind the glass came the soft mechanical click of tape engaging. A reel-to-reel machine began turning. Noah walked into the adjoining room. The machine wasn't plugged in. The tape moved anyway. Lena joined him. A label on the reel read, "Listener Archive." Noah pressed play. A little boy laughed through the speaker. Then a man's voice. "You ready?" The boy said, "Can I push the button?" "You can push the button." Noah reached out and stopped the tape. Lena watched him. "That was you." He nodded. "And your father?" Noah looked toward the machine. "That conversation happened in our kitchen." "Recorded?" "No." The tape started again by itself. This time Noah heard his own voice from that afternoon. Whoever made this didn't just record a fake old broadcast. They transmitted it. Lena stepped back. "That was in my studio." Another reel began turning. Then another. Shelves along the wall slowly became visible as emergency lighting flickered on. Hundreds of tapes. Thousands. Each labeled with a name. Noah moved down the shelves. Jensen, Mark. Ortiz, Lena. Brooks, Maya. Hale, Owen. Mercer, Elias. Bell, Arthur. Ben, Vance, Noah. There were dozens bearing his name. Childhood, teenage years, college, home, car. Tomorrow. Noah stopped. "Lena, read the label." "Don't. You've been saying that a lot tonight, and nobody's listened yet." Noah removed the tape marked tomorrow. He placed it on the machine. Static. Then Lena's voice. Noah shut the transmitter down. Noah's future voice answered, "It isn't on." Lena looked at him. The tape continued. "Then what's broadcasting?" Pause. David Vance replied, "We are." The reel stopped. At that exact moment, Lena said, "Noah, shut the transmitter down." Both froze. Noah stared at her. She realized what she'd said. "It isn't on," he whispered. Lena slowly looked toward the tape machine. "Then what's broadcasting?" "From the studio speakers?" "We are." David's voice. Exactly on cue, except now the broadcast was 10 seconds ahead. Noah heard himself say, "Don't move." 10 seconds later, he said it without intending to. "Don't move." Lena covered her mouth. The broadcast continued. "Look behind the transmitter." Noah refused. 10 seconds passed. He looked. Behind the old rack was a metal access panel. He pulled it open. Inside sat a municipal communications map, not a radio schematic. Underground cables. One thick line ran from WARB to a box marked District B branches extended outward. Bellweather Hotel. County Road 6. Black Pine Lookout? Hawthorne Plaza. Municipal Property Warehouse? Lena stared. Those are all the places. Noah nodded. All the disappearances. No. He traced the cable routes. These aren't separate systems. What are they? A network. Behind them, a chair creaked. Someone sat inside Studio A, back toward them. Headphones on. Noah stopped breathing. "Dad?" The figure didn't move. Noah entered the studio. The chair slowly rotated. Empty? But the headphones were warm. He lifted them. David's voice whispered, "You shouldn't have come?" Noah closed his eyes. "Where are you?" "Still here." "In the station?" "No." A burst of static. "Then, don't let them hear you listening." Every radio in the building switched on. Hundreds of voices filled the station. Emergency calls. Hotel conversations. Police interviews. Footsteps. Someone crying. Suitcase wheels across concrete. Security alarms. Then all of it stopped. The announcer returned. WARB 103.7. Pause. Our next listener has arrived. The on-air light went dark. Noah and Lena left before sunrise. Authorities searched WARB later that morning. No power. No tapes. No functioning recording equipment. No underground cable map. Nothing. Noah still had one cassette. His name. Tomorrow? At first, he heard himself and Lena driving away from WA, then a third voice appeared from the back seat. "David, don't turn around." Noah stopped the tape. He never played it again. 3 nights later, WARB returned. Lena was live on Ashbury FM when her signal disappeared. The WARB announcer spoke across every radio in town. "Good evening, Ashbury." Static. Then the sound of suitcase wheels rolling across concrete. A latch clicked. Someone breathed into a microphone. The announcer said, "Our next passenger has arrived." A man's frightened voice followed. "My name is Arthur Bell." Lena stopped moving. Arthur Bell had disappeared from the Ashbury Municipal Property Warehouse. No body. No trace. No explanation. Yet his voice was now broadcasting from a station dismantled 30 years ago. Then another voice entered. Noah's father. "Arthur? Can you hear me?" Arthur whispered, "Yes. Good. Where am I?" Long silence. Then David answered, "Between stations?" WARB went off the air. It has returned 7 times since. Always between 1 and 2 in the morning. Always broadcasting people who officially disappeared somewhere in Ashbury. Sometimes they're speaking. Sometimes only breathing. Sometimes listening. But one detail has never changed. Every broadcast ends at exactly 10:13 into the recording. And immediately before the signal disappears, someone in the studio always says, "Next listener." If you enjoy mysteries where every impossible case seems connected to something beneath Ashbury, subscribe to 10-Minute Mysteries. Then watch the previous story, Everyone Who Opened This Locked Suitcase Disappeared, because the final WARB broadcast contained the voice of Arthur Bell. Arthur vanished after opening the suitcase on shelf 43, and somehow a radio station that hasn't existed for 30 years knew exactly where he went. Which means Arthur may have disappeared from Ashbury, but wherever District B leads, he never stopped broadcasting. From the highway, there was nothing unusual about Ashbury. About 40,000 people lived there in a valley surrounded by mountains and black pine forest. An old railway cut through the northern side of town. Downtown sat beside the river. Farther south were warehouses, empty factories, and county roads that eventually disappeared beneath the trees. There was an old hotel, a police station, an abandoned shopping plaza. A radio station that hadn't broadcast legally in 30 years. Ordinary places, at least from the outside. Most people who lived in Ashbury went to work, raised families, complained about traffic, watched the weather, and never experienced anything they couldn't explain. Others weren't so lucky. Over the years, people disappeared from roads that supposedly didn't exist. Emergency calls arrived before the emergencies happened. Photographs showed people decades before they were born. Security cameras recorded tomorrow. And beneath almost every investigation, sooner or later, the same 2 words appeared. District B? Nobody could agree on what District B actually was. A forgotten police division, a municipal department, an archive designation, maybe nothing at all. Then, 3 days after WARB 100 and 3.7 began broadcasting again, the abandoned Ashbury North Railway tunnel turned itself back on. Dr. Claire Mercer had spent most of her adult life studying things that collapsed. Roads, bridges, abandoned mines, subway tunnels, buildings constructed overground nobody had properly understood. She had grown up in Ashbury, but left at 18 and rarely came back. When the city called and told her seismic monitors had detected a large underground cavity beneath the old railway line, she assumed they had found another maintenance chamber. Then she saw the measurements, 32 meters wide, nearly 70 meters long, and directly beneath a section of tunnel where the original construction plans showed solid rock. Claire looked across the conference table. "These scans are wrong." The city engineer shook his head. "We ran them 4 times. "Then your equipment is wrong. We brought in another system. And? Same result." Claire stared at the map. "What's down there?" The engineer slid an old photograph toward her. Ashbury North Tunnel, 1954. A group of construction workers stood beside the unfinished track. One man had circled something in the background. A steel door. Claire looked up. "That wasn't in the plans?" "No." "Does it still exist?" "We don't know." A voice came from behind her. "It exists." Claire turned. The man standing in the doorway was Thomas Reed. 63, retired railway engineer, gray beard, work boots, the kind of man who still carried a mechanical pencil in his shirt pocket even though he hadn't worked a railway in 15 years. Claire recognized him. "Mr. Reed, you used to call me Tom. I was 12. You broke into the signal shed twice." "Once, twice." Claire almost smiled. Then Thomas looked down at the photograph. The smile disappeared. You shouldn't open that door. Claire leaned back. That's usually what people say right before I have to open something. Thomas looked at her. This time they're right. They entered Ashbury North just after 8 the following morning. The tunnel had been closed for decades. Rust covered the rails. Water ran slowly down concrete walls. Old electrical cabinets stood open and empty. Claire's flashlight moved over faded signs. North platform. Signal access. Maintenance. Thomas walked several steps behind her. You worked here when this closed? Yes. Why did they shut it down? Officially, I already know the official answer. Structural instability. And unofficially, Thomas didn't answer. They reached the point marked on Claire's scan. Solid concrete wall to the left. Rock to the right. Nothing. Claire checked the tablet. The cavity is directly beneath us. Thomas stared toward a row of rusted electrical boxes, then walked to the third one. He pulled it open. Inside was an old metal lever. Claire looked at him. You've done this before? Thomas gripped the lever. Once? He pulled. Somewhere beneath them, something enormous clicked. Then another. Then another. Lights began switching on farther down the tunnel. One at a time. Yellow lamps disappearing into darkness. Claire whispered, "There's no power here." Thomas walked toward the wall. A vertical seam had appeared in the concrete. The steel door from the photograph. Stamped across its surface, Ashbury Municipal Continuity. Claire touched the lettering. What is municipal continuity? Thomas inserted an old key. District B. The lock opened. Claire stared at him. You know what District B is? Thomas pushed the door inward. I know what it was supposed to be. The staircase descended far beneath the railway. At the bottom, lights were already on. The stairs ended at a train platform. Claire stopped on the final step. It was clean. Not abandoned clean. Maintained clean. Cream tiles, wooden benches. A clock ticking above the platform. Rails disappearing into 2 black tunnels. A sign hung across the opposite wall. District B. Claire looked back at Thomas. This is underneath Ashbury. Part of it? There are no tracks connecting to this. Not anymore. You knew this was here? Thomas nodded. What was it? He looked along the empty platform. The reason Ashbury still exists. Beyond the platform was a control room. Claire expected something sophisticated. It wasn't. Most of the equipment looked 60 or 70 years old. Telephone relays, railway signal boards, mechanical switches, paper logs, rows of analog meters. Equipment from different decades had been grafted together as technology changed. At the center of the room was an enormous map of Ashbury. Claire stepped closer. Colored lines ran underneath streets and buildings. Telephone cables. Railways, electrical conduits, maintenance tunnels, emergency communication routes. Some she recognized, others shouldn't have existed. Small metal labels identified locations. Bellweather Hotel, Ashbury Police, County Road 6, Black Pine, Hawthorne Plaza, WARB, property storage. Claire turned. Why are all of these connected? Thomas shook his head. They weren't. What? We didn't connect them. Claire looked back at the map. Thomas moved beside her. It started with the railway. He pointed toward Ashbury North. In 1954, construction crews were cutting the tunnel through the northern ridge. They broke into a cavity. A cave? That's what they thought. What was inside? Nothing. Claire waited. Thomas continued. That's what frightened them. She frowned. A hole in the ground frightened railway workers. It was 30 feet across when you stood inside it. So, from outside, the cavity measured less than 4 feet. Claire stared at him. That's impossible. That's why they sealed it. Thomas walked toward an old photograph pinned beside the map. Workers stood around a rough opening in the tunnel wall. Beyond it, darkness. The first problem started 3 days later. Telephone operators heard calls crossing lines that weren't physically connected. Railway signals changed for trains that didn't exist. Maintenance workers opened doors and came out somewhere else. One man entered a service corridor beneath the station. Thomas paused. He came out of the Bellweather Hotel. Claire looked toward the map. Across town? Thomas nodded. 6 miles away. What did the city do? What cities always do? He gave a tired smile. They formed a committee. Claire almost laughed. Thomas didn't. Then people started disappearing. He pointed toward the words municipal continuity. District B was created to stop that. How? At first, they tried isolating the systems. It didn't work. No. Then what? Thomas looked at the routing board. They learned to redirect them. Claire's expression changed. Redirect what? We never knew. Signals? Sometimes. People? Sometimes. Objects. Thomas didn't answer. He didn't need to. Claire thought about the cases she had heard growing up. The phone booth? The hotel? The missing hikers? The suitcase. She looked at Thomas. You're saying all of that. I'm saying Ashbury has spent 70 years living above something nobody understands. Claire moved along the control board. A route marked County Road 6 connected to an old telephone exchange. Emergency calls? Thomas nodded. Another route connected WARB to the same network. The radio station? Yes. Hawthorne Plaza connected through an old security trunk. Tomorrow's camera footage? Thomas nodded again. Claire stepped back. They weren't separate incidents. No, they were leaks. Thomas looked toward the dark tunnel beyond the platform. That's what we called them. Claire stared at the map. And District B routed around them? For a while. What happened to the missing people? Thomas went silent. Thomas. Some came back. Some? Not where they started. And the others? His eyes remained on the map. Sometimes they called. Claire thought of WARB broadcasting voices of people who had vanished years earlier. Her skin prickled. So they're alive. Thomas finally looked at her. I didn't say that. Claire noticed another map beneath the main one. Only a corner showed. She pulled it free. Thomas immediately stepped forward. Claire? Too late. This map was older. 1954. Ashbury appeared as little more than streets around the railway. But a black mark sat beneath the northern tunnel. S-Site 01. Claire looked at Thomas. Site 1. He said nothing. She followed a thin line running beyond the edge of the county. Another mark. Far away. Site 02. Then another. Site 03. Claire looked at him. Ashbury isn't the only one. Thomas shook his head slowly. No. What are these? We never found out? You had 70 years? We had 70 years to keep Ashbury from becoming one of the places people simply stopped coming back from. Claire looked around the room. For the first time, she understood the equipment. This wasn't a laboratory. It wasn't designed to study something. It was built like a railway switch yard, a system for deciding where things went. Then one indicator illuminated. WARB. Thomas turned immediately. Another. County Road 6, then Hawthorne, Black Pine. One after another. Each light glowed red, then changed. CLOs. Claire stepped toward the board. What's happening? Thomas moved quickly between switches. I don't know. That's reassuring. This system hasn't operated since the tunnel closed. The final indicator illuminated. District B beneath it. Final transfer. The platform lights outside turned on. A bell rang once. Claire heard something in the tunnel. Metal wheels. Far away. Growing closer. She looked at Thomas. There isn't a railway connected to this platform? He whispered. I know. Headlights appeared in the darkness. The train that entered District B looked decades old. Green passenger cars. Ashbury North lettering faded along the sides. It slowed. Stopped. The doors opened. Nobody stepped out. Claire approached carefully. Inside the first carriage, objects had been arranged on the seats. Telephone headset. Police badge. Old camera drive. Gray coat. A clipboard labeled Arthur Bell. Headphones bearing a faded WARB logo. Claire looked through the next carriage. More objects. Wallets, keys, photographs, luggage tags, things belonging to people Ashbury had lost. Thomas touched one seat. It's returning them. The people? His face fell. No. The platform speaker crackled. Static. Then a man's voice. Tom? Thomas froze. Claire looked at him. The speaker repeated, Tom? Thomas walked slowly toward it. His hands trembled. Daniel? Claire had never seen fear on his face. Now she saw something else. Hope. My brother, he whispered. He worked here. He stayed behind when we sealed District B. The speaker crackled. Thomas moved closer. Where are you? His brother answered. Not somewhere you can follow. Thomas closed his eyes. 40 years of questions disappeared from his face for 1 second. Then Daniel said, You can shut it down now. How? The original switch? Thomas looked toward the control room. Will that bring you back? Long static. Then, no? Thomas swallowed. Are you alive? This time, the silence lasted longer. Daniel answered, "I don't know anymore." The speaker went quiet. Thomas opened a locked cabinet inside the control room. One mechanical lever remained. Emergency network closure. Claire looked at the Ashbury map. If we do this, it closes every route. For good. Thomas looked at Site 02 on the old map. Ashbury's routes. Claire understood. Not the network. Only their part of it? Thomas put his hand on the lever. Claire joined him. Together, they pulled. The control room shook. Every relay activated at once. Then, across Ashbury, things became quiet. On County Road 6, the disconnected phone line went dead. Inside Hawthorne Plaza, camera 14 lost its final signal. At the Municipal Property Warehouse, shelf 43 was suddenly empty. Inside WARB, the red-on AR sign flickered one last time, then went dark. At the Bellweather Hotel, the lock on room 214 turned by itself. The door quietly closed. Deep beneath Ashbury Police Station, an old District B indicator went black. At Black Pine Lookout, a light no electrical system power disappeared from the upper window, and beneath Ashbury North, the great municipal map went dark. Every location, every route, every indicator, gone. Thomas watched the last light disappear. For 70 years, something beneath Ashbury had always been active. Now, nothing. The train remained on the platform, its doors closed. The engine started. Claire expected it to return through the tunnel. Instead, it moved forward and slowly disappeared into darkness. Not around a bend, not into fog. One carriage, then another, then nothing. The rails ended 20 yards beyond the platform. Claire stared. Thomas didn't. He had seen enough impossible things for one lifetime. They left District B before sunrise. The steel door was sealed. Then concrete was poured across it. Ashbury North Tunnel was filled 6 months later. The municipal maps were classified and removed. Officially, District B had never existed. And then something unexpected happened. Nothing. Weeks passed. Then months. No impossible emergency calls. No future security footage. No changing photographs. No broadcasts from dead stations. No unexplained transfers. For the first time since anyone could remember, Ashbury became quiet. Thomas finally retired. Claire returned to her work outside the valley. Families continued living in the town. Children walked to school. People stopped for coffee downtown. Traffic backed up beside the river every weekday at 5. The Bellweather remained old. WARB remained abandoned. Black Pine remained a forest. Maybe that was all the people who built District B had ever wanted. Not answers. Not control. Just the chance for 40,000 people to live somewhere ordinary. 2 years later, workers clearing an old municipal records building discovered a steel filing cabinet sealed behind a brick wall. Inside was one District B box. Most of it was empty. One map remained. It did not show Ashbury. Different terrain, a coastline, a long peninsula. Several small towns, no names. At the center was one black mark. Site 02. Status? Active. Beneath it was the original 1954 survey sheet. 2 entries had been typed near the bottom. Site 01, Ashbury, CO closed. Site 02, active. Someone had added one handwritten sentence beneath them. Closing one route does not close the network. Ashbury never appeared in another District B report. The abandoned radio station remained silent. The phone on County Road 6 never rang again. And whatever waited beyond Black Pine seemed to disappear with the last train. People eventually stopped talking about District B. Then they stopped remembering it. Today, if you drive through Ashbury, you probably won't notice anything unusual. You'll see an old railway, a hotel, a police station, an abandoned radio building, roads disappearing into Black Pine Forest. Ordinary places, and perhaps that's what Ashbury always wanted to be. Ordinary. There is only one problem. District B's final map didn't contain one site, it contained 2, and somewhere far from Ashbury, Site 02 is still active. If this was your first visit to Ashbury, the story doesn't begin here. Start the Ashbury Mysteries from the beginning. There are roads, photographs, broadcasts, hotel rooms, phone calls, and missing people scattered throughout these cases. And now that you know what District B was trying to do, you may notice things the first time through that didn't seem important before.